I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome. This is the November 7th, 2017 meeting of the Corte Madera Town Council. Could we please have the roll call?
Councilmember Andrews.
Present.
Councilmember Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Here.
Vice Mayor Condon.
Here.
Mayor First.
Here. Thank you. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First of all, I will report out of our closed session from October 17th. We have given advice to staff, and there is nothing further to report. Next up is open time for public comment. This is the time we set aside in the meeting for members of the public to speak on anything that's not on tonight's agenda. We give you 3 minutes. Is there anybody who'd like to speak at open time? Thank you. Would you please go up to the podium and state your name and where you live? Is the mic on? Thank you.
Peggy Burnett, excuse me, 14 Laurel Drive, Corte Madera. Before the memories of the recent fires in Sonoma, Mendocino, and Lake counties fade, I urge Corte Madera to develop a plan to reduce flammable brush and dead trees. As Dick Spotswood said in his October 14th IJ column, our greatest threat to life and property in Marin is wildfire spreading into the urban interface. Oakland's fire department has an annual inspection in May of properties in high fire hazard areas and can issue fines to property owners for noncompliance. Property owners are mailed reminder notifications regarding property upkeep expectations prior to the beginning of inspections. I will be emailing you some pictures of hazardous fire conditions in our town. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public who would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar. The purpose of the consent calendar is to vote on items that are routine or have been discussed previously. They will all be passed in one motion unless anybody would like to pull an item. Any member of the council, staff, or the public may request an item to be pulled. We will take town items first. Is there anybody who would like to pull any town items? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to pass 4.1.1 through 4.1.7.
So moved. Second.
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Condon.
Yes.
Mayor First.
Yes. And we have a sanitary district item, item 4.2.1. Is there anybody who would like to pull this for discussion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Board Member Andrews.
Yes.
Board Member Bailey.
Yes.
Board Member Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice President Condon.
Yes.
President First.
Yes. Thank you. Got through that pretty quickly. Now we're on to public hearings for what I think most of the people in the audience are here for. Agenda item 5.1, review and possible approval of a mitigated negative declaration and adoption of a general plan amendment to the current use permit, and design review for additions and modifications to Marin Montessori School.
Mayor First, I will be recusing myself. I lived at 5132 Paradise Drive, just 3 doors up from the school.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will turn this over to Adam.
Yeah, I'm passing it over to Sean Kennings, our contract planner for this project. Thank you.
Mayor First, members of the council, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sean Kennings. I'm a consultant with LAK Associates. I've been working on this project for the last year or so, contract staff to the town. I'll go over briefly the basic concept of the project, and we'll go through some of the discussion from last council, and then what was supplied by the applicant, the town response, and then after my presentation, the applicant has their own presentation. Okay.
Switch the lights if you wanted.
From that far away?
Okay, and then that one's gonna.
Oh, you're right. Forget it. I forgot about that one.
Does this work? No.
I just forgot about it.
That's right, you can just do next slide.
Okay, that'll work. Okay, as proposed, the applicant has purchased the property next door at 5164 Paradise Drive, which was a residential property. The applicant is proposing to convert that from residence to school use, so they're asking for a general plan amendment. And to be consistent with the general plan amendment, they're asking for rezoning from R1A to semi-public facilities district. They're also asking for an amendment to their existing conditional use permit, which includes design review for the new construction and remodels of the buildings on the property and on 5164 Paradise Drive. In conjunction with all this, they had a CEQA analysis, which was an initial study, and a mitigated negative declaration for the project impacts. Here's a quick summary of the project. Again, converting the existing residential buildings on 5164 Paradise Drive. It's approximately 3,100 square feet. A residence and a cottage. Both structures will generally remain in the same footprint and aesthetic. There are minor modifications to exteriors for orientation for school uses, and then interior modifications for school uses. There is a modification to what's called the drop-off pickup cul-de-sac. They're enlarging it to the east to accommodate, I believe, 4 additional cars during their drop-off and pickup time. One of the major improvements is the new elementary classroom, which is a 2,300 square foot building, which will replace 2 dome structures. They also have a BCDC pathway improvement along the shoreline. In addition, they also have traffic control and parking measures, TDM, Transportation Demand Management Program for drop-off, pickup, circulation, and parking. And again, to reiterate, over the course of this project, there is no increase in staff or students as part of this project. In 2014, they got a use permit amendment to cap their maximum student enrollment at 232. And through the process, I believe their student enrollment right now is 227. Here's a quick orientation of the campus. On the west, there's sort of the main campus buildings. In the middle is a ball field and their parking area. On the east side, they have, there you can see the domes in the middle, and then on the far right is the 5164 Paradise Drive property. And Mayor First had some questions about the right-of-way. As you can see in this existing site plan, the sort of gray shaded area to the south right there of the drop-offs, this is their existing cul-de-sac drop-off area, and this is the existing area that's in the Corte Madera Paradise Drive right-of-way. This is their proposed project as it is today. If you recall, council asked for some new parking on the site. And so real quickly here, there's their multi-purpose room. And again, when they do this conversion of this residence here and the cottage here, it's going to allow them to have their programmatic abilities for their classrooms in these 4 buildings, which is central to the Montessori system. And this frees up these rooms for multi-purpose for activities during the day and after school and during rainy days. In response to council's questions at the last hearing, they were able to fit 2 additional parking spaces here. So they removed 2 parallel spaces and turned them into 4 head-in spaces. Originally, the discussion at the council hearing was about accommodating 3 spaces in this area, but the fire department requested that they leave this open for egress and ingress during fire emergency. And again, here is the cul-de-sac. This would be the expansion area right there required in the right-of-way. So this is existing, this is the new. And this would be the building, the new upper elementary, which is replacing the domes. There's your visual representation in the new upper elementary building. Those are the domes that it would be replacing. Summary of the Planning Commission hearings. There were a couple of Planning Commission hearings to discuss the previous entitlements and conditions of approval, of which we have gone through exhaustively the previous conditions of approval, the new conditions of approval, new ones that have been proposed by the Planning Commission, and including ones that have been proposed by the Town Council. We went over the CEQA document, the detailed analysis of the noise studies and the mitigations required for that. We had staff responses to the MMD comments, and we assessed the potential traffic calming measures, pedestrian circulation methods, and opportunities. Again, the Planning Commission had a unanimous recommendation to forward the approval to the council. Really quickly, here, this is a summary of the September 19th Town Council. There was discussion among council about whether or not, in general, is this the right use for this property at 5164, as well as the campus, Montessori school in general. There was questions about traffic and circulation and safety, and the council requested how can you incentivize carpooling, how can you incentivize other TDM measures. Mayor First had many questions about the right-of-way width, what can be accommodated in that right-of-way, whether or not the right-of-way is needed, and if these improvements happen, what happens then to those that right-of-way configuration. The council also wanted to know about pedestrian access and crossing across Paradise Drive, and if there was a fundamental way to address safety along Paradise Drive. And again, the council asked for those additional parking spaces on site. So in response, the Montessori school provided another comprehensive look at their conditions of approval. They included recommended new conditions, including lighting, minimizing lighting at certain times of night, activating the spaces at 5164 for janitorial services earlier in the afternoon so as not to disturb residential uses. They included revised conditions for landscaping that had previously not been picked up. They included more TDM measures for circulation and parking. And again, in the resolution for your conditional use permit amendment, there's the master list of condition of approval, which has memorialized all the conditions from the past, whether those have been superseded, and the new ones specific to TDM and some of these measures that both the Planning Commission and the Council have recommended. One of those things is updating carpooling incentives, giving preferential parking and access for parents and employees who carpool, and finally, addressing the parking on site. So now that the school has 43 total spaces, previously, before this application, they had 37. So there's 4 spaces on the 5164 property and 2 new spaces on the main campus. In conjunction with the Montessori School's response to the council's requests, the town also had Parisi Transportation look at a whole host of things, specifically the evaluation of a left turn lane for access into the school. And at this time, there's not enough information that could help sort of ascertain whether or not it's warranted for a left turn lane or whether it's even functionally possible. So there's no design concept as part of that evaluation. Basically, the evaluation was there'd be more study would be needed in order to really even see if a left turn lane makes sense. But it would require widening parts of the road, restriping parts of the road for both east and west from the project driveway. Parisi also reviewed the possibility for a pedestrian crosswalk and determined that the best location for that would be at the Upland Circle. I see a typo. Upland Circle at the BCDC trailhead, just to the west of the Montessori campus parking area. Parisi also provided a rough estimate of the cost and the improvements, approximately $100,000 around that area to do what we're calling sort of a Tamalpais Avenue type crossing, which is the ladder crossing, what are those, the little knobs?
Rapid flash beacon.
The rapid flash beacon, but the little knobs, I forgot what those things are called. The dot.
Bots dots?
Yeah, whatever. And we'll show you a little exhibit that. It's also in your staff report. We didn't evaluate the right-of-way as was requested. Again, it's not known as to what the town would need in terms of right-of-way in that area. The school does have an encroachment permit, as is now, for their cul-de-sac. That would be part of their application. They would require to get an encroachment permit for the addition. So in theory, if the town needed that space, then the school would be sort of on the hook for managing their cul-de-sac on site and how they would accommodate it should the Paradise Drive right-of-way be modified somehow. So really quickly, these are the circulation improvements and project proposals. The new parking on the west side now is instead of by the access. They did also dedicate 3 visitor spaces, which would be spaces that would accommodate people or parents or visitors coming, and that's in this location. They would be striped, designated, and this would be the new head-in parking. Again, no parking on Paradise Drive. They've also included language to say no parking on specific streets during the school day. But again, cars would, if they can't turn directly into the main parking area, they're directed to go up Robin Drive, make a U-turn, and then come back and do this flow of circulation. And there are several conditions of approval that the school has included as part of their project that outline how they address parking and circulation during the day, including monitors and attendance and timing and so on. Previously, the Planning Commission included the condition of approval for a speed notification sign. This is one that's on Tamalpais Avenue. The school has agreed to pay their fair share for one of these signs, actually 2 of these signs, one in the east direction, one in the west direction, and that's to be determined where those are located. Here's the Parisi crosswalk evaluation. They were able to come up with this preliminary design. As you can see, it's got a ADA access bulb out here, the high ladder visibility crossing, ADA access on the north side. Here would be your flashing beacons on either side, and then your sort of alert areas of where to stop, and then striping in both directions with notification signs. And again, Parisi did their evaluation. This is the most likely solution for a crossing across Paradise, and in their preliminary estimation, this is about $100,000, not $150,000. If it was a traffic light, it might be more around $300,000. But at this time, it's not known whether or not a traffic light is warranted, but they'd have to do a further evaluation of that assessment. And sort of in summation, again, the issue at the heart of this is whether or not the general plan and rezoning is in accordance with the general plan, the code, which is if you convert 5164 from a residential use to a school use, is it going to be consistent and compatible with the residential neighborhood surrounding it? And in that sense, does it create an unsafe traffic or public safety condition? And again, we did an environmental study to evaluate some of the conditions related to noise. There was some traffic information that was included in that document. But again, the school's not increasing their enrollment or their employees, and so it doesn't warrant any sort of traffic-related issues when it comes to mitigation. So based on things that we've heard at the last council, based on the Montessori school's response, based on the town's response, staff has provided the resolutions tonight to approve, to certify the initial study mitigating neg deck, to approve the general plan amendment, to approve the conditional use permit design review, and to introduce the first ordinance for the rezoning. Staff has also provided you the options. Council tonight can approve those resolutions and introduce the ordinance as included. You can direct staff and the applicant to go back and make further modifications and come back to a hearing at a later date, or you can direct staff to prepare resolutions with findings to deny the project. And again, we've included the findings for the CUP, for the design review, and staff, again, based on everything that's been presented, has provided those resolutions based on those findings. And I'll take any questions if you have them, and after that, the applicant has their presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Over here? I had one, and I believe you said this, but I just want to be doubly sure that the encroachment permit that the town, if this is approved, that the town would likely issue for the additional encroachment for the turnaround circle cul-de-sac, that would be revocable if the town should ever find that we need that town right-of-way to, widen Paradise Drive or create a sidewalk or whatever.
That's generally how they work. It's a recorded easement on the deed. There's language that's required by the Department of Public Works that explicitly states that you're entering an agreement with the town, and it's on the deed that should the town need that for whatever reason, they're allowed to come and remove those improvements.
Revocable encroachment permit.
Got it. Okay. No other questions? Great. Then we can hear from the applicant. Thank you, Sean.
Will I have a clicker, Sean? Great, thank you. Which one, this one? Okay. Okay. Got it, okay, thank you. Well, good evening, good to see everybody again. Mayor First, council members, thanks for having us back again. My name is Sam Shapiro, I'm the head of school at Marin Montessori. Councilmember Andrews, good to see you. So we appreciate so much the opportunity to present to you again tonight. Getting to this point in our planning process has been long, challenging, but very informative, especially in helping us learn more about the priorities of our neighbors, as well as the shared desire for a safer Paradise Drive corridor. We hope to stay in direct touch with our neighbors, working collaboratively moving forward. We're also excited to work with the town on safety improvements, including voluntary financial contributions. There have been, though, and there seem to be a few points of confusion about our project, and my sole purpose tonight is to simply clear these up. So there is some who still suggest that this project will somehow not make the area safer, or that we are, as a school, are not committed to safety. So I just want to outline how, in fact, this project will make conditions better and safer for everyone in our community. By not increasing our enrollment or staffing, but increasing our parking. Last time we were here, I believe we had 4 parking spaces. We now have come back with 6. By not increasing staffing, enrollment, by increasing parking on campus, we'll take more cars off the road and from neighboring streets. In fact, once these are approved, these are the conditions we will abide by, and the benefits they'll bring will be noticeable. And we've already actually implemented a number of these conditions voluntarily. One of the things we heard from a neighbor is that pedestrian safety was a big priority of hers, and so starting months ago, we instructed all employees to no longer park on Paradise Drive where she walks, and we moved all our school vehicles to an off-site location. So some of the safeties we see here, the safety improvements that are asterisked are ones we have already done. So we have moved all our fleet vehicles off-site 6 months ago. Employees no longer park on Paradise. I've appointed a director of traffic and safety. You can see the list here. We monitor events very carefully, and we coordinate very carefully with MCDS. We have a more aggressive carpooling program for parents and carpool incentive for employees. We're also very excited about the flashing signs for drivers, and we are confident these will help have some traffic calming implications. And as I mentioned, we are excited to support safety improvements that the town sees as appropriate. We're especially interested in the crosswalk idea, and are ready to voluntarily commit some finances to that. One thing that I think is important in understanding the safety is just getting a sense of how pickup and drop-off works. This is something that David Parisi has studied and a few other traffic consultants, always with strong reviews on how effective it is. So cars will, let's see if I can find the pointer here. Is it this one, Sean? This one?
Nice work.
That was my mom right there. Yeah, that's what she always did. There we go. All right. Thank you. All right, great. Cars coming east on Paradise turn left here. And if they're elementary students, they're going to go into the bulb, and then the children are dropped off here. If they're primary or lower elementary, they come left here. They queue in this parking lot. They turn off their engines. They wait to be directed by our traffic administrator to come to the drop-off area. They turn off their engines again, so there's no cars on when children or adults are walking between cars. The children are escorted out of the cars by attendants. Parents do not exit the car. And then they are directed by the administrator when they can leave and exit onto Paradise. We have a video to show you, and just based on my last move, I'm afraid I'm going to mess this one up. So, press forward. Okay. No, that's okay. We could have had a cool soundtrack, but didn't do it for this. So what you can see over here is they're queuing. They're waiting to be directed to come forward. The trees block a lot of the view, but once they're here, they stop. They turn off their engines, so we never have cars running when people are walking. They wait, an attendant comes, opens the door, removes the child, walks them by their hand in. Once the children are removed and the traffic administrator directs the parent that they may leave, they turn their engine back on and exit onto Paradise. So it's very smooth. Very rarely do we need to queue onto Robin Drive. It flows well, and as I've said, it's been studied by a number of different consultants with good reviews. I think the other thing I would just say is that as a school whose mission is to educate children, we have children as young as 18 months old. We are so committed to safety. It is really our number one priority. So I hope that gives you a sense of how it works. And what I'd like to do now is introduce Peter Fow, our architect, just to explain the additional parking spaces that are new since last we saw you. It just says pointer.
Pointer,
Yeah.
okay. Afternoon, evening. Last time we were here, we talked about two spaces that we thought we could find here. And so we went back to the new, I guess he's the new fire chief, Reuben Martin. Marshall, okay. And so we went back to him to confirm, because we had talked with him on site about these spaces, and then he met with his logistical people and said, well, sorry to report you can't do those spaces. So what we did is this where they are, Helen? What we did is we found a spot. It requires, which one is the pointer thingy? Oh, there it is, pointer. We found a space here where there's enough depth for the cars to back up and back into the spot. And there's a bit of an encroachment into this berm, but that's not really useful space anyway. So we can get an additional 2 spots and still have the maneuvering space to make that work. So the good news is we found the 2 spots elsewhere, and it seems to work out fine.
So just to point out, David Parisi, our parking consultant, is here tonight. He did, when in the initial study, determine we did not need any additional parking, but we have ultimately brought 6 new spaces, as well as 3 visitor spots. There's also been some confusion about whether, in fact, it's completely appropriate to rezone 5164 for our school use. And I'd like to introduce Scott Hochstrasser, who's going to briefly explain why it is appropriate.
Thank you, Sam. Members of the council, my name is Scott Hochstrasser. I'm a land use planning consultant and environmental planner. I briefly want to address the rezoning and why it's needed. The key point really is that most cities and towns in the county allow for schools in residential zones. Your town and your general plan is sort of unique. The project's one whole development, and the improvement plan cannot be viewed in component parts without the rezoning. And as you have seen in the presentation, additional parking and circulation has been improved substantially by the use of and the combination of these two properties. In fact, the rezoning and the combination of the two properties densifies, if you will, the school use. As you heard earlier, the enrollment isn't increasing, but the actual land area is. So really, the student to land area ratio is increased. The rezoning of the project also provides standards and setbacks that are generally in compliance with the R1A district. And that's clearly specified and discussed in your staff report on page 14. The building juxtaposition, the shoreline setbacks, vehicle circulation, the landscaping will remain generally the same for the school use as they are for the current established single-family residential use. Again, while most projects in the town approve likely increased density, this one will actually decrease density. The project spreads out over the existing land area and is expanded by the new property. Lastly, it's interesting to note that the current zoning, the R1 property zoning, allows for family daycare centers for 8 children and up to 12 with a permit. And although these uses are similar to the proposed Marin Montessori school, they don't require a rezoning or a conditional use permit. The conclusion is that the conditional use permit enables the town to impose many operational conditions suggested by the Planning Commission and staff, and for the town to hold the school accountable for those operational restrictions and benefit the community and further ensure the land use compatibility. The combination of the general plan amendment, the rezoning, conditional use permit with conditions provides substantial public benefit, and we would hope that your council would see that and approve the project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
So briefly, a neighbor or two has questioned whether this will lower property values, and we've shown through the process, through analysis we submitted, through a letter from Realtor and local resident, Corte Madera resident Linda Toll, and from Jack and K. Cohane, who are here tonight, previous owners of 5164, that that's not at all the case. Another suggestion has been that Marin Montessori somehow has been irresponsible in keeping our promises. As Sean mentioned, we did an exhaustive analysis of the 150 conditions of approval the town has given us over our 50-year history. As you'll see, we have a solid track record of compliance. And the 5 that were partially met, one was around some trees that had died. We've replanted that. Additionally, I'd like to mention that I spoke with a neighbor recently who expressed concern about an unpermitted dock that came with the property we bought. It's part of our conditional approval to remove it, and once we have BCDC approval, we're waiting for that, we will remove that as well. So I hope this clears up any conception that we're somehow irresponsible with our compliance. The other question around will this change the quality and the feeling of the neighborhood, we'd like to actually say that this is going to be aesthetically beneficial, and especially around noise. Because we're mostly just doing interior remodeling and preserving the landscaping and not building up, the character and the charm of the property will remain intact. Further, we've agreed to strict sound mitigation measures that are much stricter than any residents would ever have to comply with. And we've agreed to pay for 2 years of sound monitoring to hold ourselves accountable to the conditions of approval around noise. As we've noted, an additional structural mitigation, we've included that we'll direct any sound back to our main campus and away from our next door neighbor. And because the classroom will use fewer than half the days of the year, we're closed weekends, summers, holidays, and evenings, and the entire summer, the school will be far less impactful than a residence would likely be. Finally, there's some confusion about the level of support our neighborhood has for our project. So as you'll note, we calculated support and opposition objectively, solely based on the facts of public comment. So either public comment in voice at a planning commission or town council hearing, or in an email or letter. In addition to the 56 neighborhood families who support our project, including Michelle Walker, the principal of Cove School, Lucinda Katz, principal of Marin Country Day School, as well as Julie Elam of Marin Primary Middle School, our neighbor, the Preserve, has submitted a letter of support for our project, as well through AMCO's Regional Vice President, Richard Hawthorne. These are all part of the public record. And I will share that with you later. I believe this project has garnered so much public support, and we can see here in terms of percentage of neighbor support. To your right, you'll also see there's some question of whether non-Marin Montessori families support our project. Actually, of the 56, 24 are not affiliated with Marin Montessori. So I believe our project has garnered so much support for these three reasons. First, it leads to improved safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists on Paradise. Fewer ins and outs from 5164 driveway, and better public access to and experience of the lovely BCDC trail. Number two, second, it ensures preservation of the lush neighborhood character. The vast majority of changes to the structure at 5164 will be interior models and keep most of the beautiful landscaping. MMS is a very stable school. We've been around for over 50 years. We're not going to be flipping this property. We're not going to rent it out as an Airbnb. We won't have loud barking dogs or wild parties. And third, I think why this is so compelling is that what could be more exciting for the residents of the town of Corte Madera to support a school, a nonprofit school, educating children more effectively. They are our future. So thank you so much for your time tonight. And I do have paper copies that I will submit to the council with this information, as well as all the names and addresses of those residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you be willing to answer a few questions if we have some?
Of course, yeah.
Great.
Should I stay?
How about over here? Bob, Jim, any questions?
Not for me.
No? Well, I wanted to thank you for your presentation. Thank you for finding those extra parking spaces. You know that's a big deal. But I was very intrigued by that one bullet point you put on one of your slides, offering to help fund perhaps a crosswalk or a left turn lane.
Yeah.
Have you thought about what you feel the most immediate need is and what your level of support might be?
Yes, Mayor, first we have, and I've spoken with my Board of Trustees as well to get approval around any financial voluntary commitment. We are really excited about the flashing crosswalk idea at Upland. We think that's a great benefit for people who'd like to use BCDC. There are a number of our families that live at the Preserve, and we know that crossing can be precarious there. So we would be excited to support that project, and I'm authorized to let the council know that we can contribute $50,000 as long as it's considered a fair share. So it's important that it's a fair share for the folks, many folks who are impacted and use that, and it'd be a voluntary agreement.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you for that. That's very thoughtful and appreciated. I also think the crosswalk would be a very worthwhile project to pursue. And I think the connection with the BCDC pathway makes a lot of sense. I do want to ask, though, for your families that live in the Preserve, are they all going to the main campus and they will be walking all the way down to take that crosswalk? Or would there be any interest for them to perhaps jaywalk and try to get over to the east side of campus? I just want to make sure that the crosswalk would be used.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
We're not going to
Absolutely.
see folks crossing on the
I
other
think people
side.
are very aware that it's very dangerous to park
Okay.
or to cross at Robin Drive because of that blind curve.
Yeah.
And absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the parents would make very sure of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other-
And when I
any other-
find those documents, I'll bring them up.
Okay. Any other questions? Down here? Okay, thank you very much. I just want to ask staff one more question, and Todd, this might be a question for you, or any of you can answer it. At the last hearing, I had asked about, if in the future we deem it necessary to create that left turn lane, what we might need in terms of right-of-way. I just wanted to make very certain that any improvements that might be approved allowed for enough, turnaround in the cul-de-sac without that easement, the encroachment into the town's right-of-way. So I know there was some discussion among staff. Can you talk about the conclusion you came to, which my understanding is that you feel that's not a concern?
I think one of the issues right now is that there's a variety of different things happening in that area. As we know, one of the visions is to create also a multi-use path on the south side of Paradise. And so when you think about making additional modifications, it's challenging to sort of put all those pieces in place and say, here's specifically what we're going to need at this point in time if we go ahead and create the conditions necessary for a left turn lane. And that was where, essentially we started with the discussion with David Parisi on this as well, who's also familiar, obviously, with the multi-use path. And in addition, there might be some additional need to widen the road east and west. Could be impacts even with the Robin Drive Paradise intersection, which, again, until you design this out, makes it very difficult to say one way or the other whether or not definitively we would need that right-of-way or not. And even whether or not that left turn lane is really going to improve situations, given everything else that would need to happen that I just mentioned in terms of other design modifications or changes to the roadway. So we weren't able really, to get a definitive answer that you asked at this point in time. It is, the first step is getting the survey done to completion, and then sort of plugging in these various different elements until we can actually get a real good sense about are we going to need the north side or need any of that property to actually make that left turn lane work, and then again, is it ultimately going to give the benefits that we hope to see or that we think might be accomplished by it at this point. Sorry, that's a
Well, thank you.
working.
Obviously, we don't have the answers now,
No.
but I did take a look at the property lines, and there is some right-of-way on the south side of Paradise as well. I just hope that, obviously, the school is aware of where the property lines are, and of course, the town, if this is approved, the town, I'm sure, would work with the school in the future to figure out what we could do. My goal last time was just simply to make sure that we're not making some decisions that preclude future traffic enhancements in the area. So, Todd, did you want to add anything to that?
Madam Mayor, I was just going to add that, our conversation was a little bit on the fly at our last meeting, and as staff, and we did meet with the Central Vermont Police Authority as well, and some things jumped at us when we looked at the traffic counts. When we discussed the pros and cons of the left-hand turn lane, it's really the end of the line of Paradise Drive, and when you look at the numbers, it really wasn't justifiable for the cost effectiveness of having something like that. What did jump out at us is trying to find a pathway on the south side to get us to the crosswalk and have a crosswalk. That really looks like a really encouraging, nice amendment, out there. So I still think, in looking at it preliminarily, we do have options if we ever want to consider a left-hand turn lane. It doesn't preclude us from looking at that, is what I'll say. So.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Any other questions down here? Okay, thank you. Let's open it up to public comment. We have a full house. Can I just get a show of hands? How many of you would like to speak tonight? Okay, a number of you. We're going to keep it to 3 minutes. We have a little timer in the upper right-hand corner of our screens. As the time progresses, the red outline kind of takes over the whole rectangle, so you can visually be able to track how much time you have left in your 3 minutes. I will ask that in order to keep this moving, we have you, I know it's a little crowded, but as much as is practical, can we have people line up a little bit so that we don't waste a lot of time waiting for folks to walk up to the podium? When you come up, please state your name and where you live, and you will hear the buzzer when the 3 minutes is up, and we're going to try to stick to that because we've got a lot of people who need to speak. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor first, Vice Mayor Condon, council members, I will try to keep it to 1 minute. My name is Paul Stein. I've lived at 4 Cibrian Drive since 1999. My children went to Marin Country Day. We moved to Marin specifically here because of the fine schools in the area. I believe that children are our future and good schools are the root of our future. The proposed project, I think, is astoundingly good. The improvements to the BCDC right-of-way, I think the crosswalk is a wonderful idea. The idea of improving their physical plant in a harmonious manner, which is doing us a huge benefit to the community, and I urge you to approve the project.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members and the audience here. I'm Dr. Jim Simon, and I've learned to walk around with a microphone and not miss out on talking into it, and this will take much less than 3 minutes. Our youngest son went to Marin Montessori. We think they would be great neighbors. We're especially delighted that they're going to change the domes because they're antiquated and need to be fixed, but I'd like you to disconnect the concept of the dome project, which is badly needed, with changing the character of the R1 neighborhood. And I just want to say that the really big picture is the proposed project, that this is presented before you, that you're so thoughtfully spending your valuable, precious time on this, that by changing the zoning, even though change is the only constant in the world, all the hard work of the past councils, the present council, and the future councils, you're having a precedent that change can occur, and all the time that you spend here doesn't mean anything. And I know you put too much time into this and too much thought into this to not at least have a legacy. We're R1. If we're an R1, that's really nice and special. Hey, great for Corte Madera. It doesn't mean that it should be the sacrificial lamb for changing the zoning. And I had asked Sam what time of the day and what time of the week that wonderful video was made because the lighting was really low, and I've never seen traffic like that. And Stephanie Brown, who isn't here, wanted me to say that she's tailgated all the time. People beep. If you go on the speed limit of heading from the west towards the east, it goes from 30 to 25 to 35 to 25 to 25 to 20. And I don't think I have a day that somebody doesn't tailgate me or go through there without beeping their horn. And Stephanie wanted that said. And the other thing she wanted was she wanted the sidewalks and safety. We're all for safety. I think the school's great. They'll be a great neighbor. I have great neighbors. There's no complaint. But please, if you're going to change a precedent, do some traffic studies when you have 18 tandem trucks going by or in some fill project going into Tiburon, which we just had. And it's a safety hazard for all of us. I'd like to see a presence for the Central Marin Police out there more than they have been. We used to have Sean Smith out there with a motorcycle looking out for everybody, and he was terrific when we crossed our children to get over to the school bus stop. And I thank you all, and come by at 3 o'clock and see if you can drive through there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Duree. I live at 5094 Paradise Drive. I'm just going to reiterate what Jim said. I also questioned the video and what time it was taken. I have never seen that few cars other than in the late evening or weekends or that sort of thing. I also am concerned about the math on these new parking places. We are getting 6 new parking places. 4 of them are at the Cohane's, ex-Cohane's residence, so that means 6 take away 4 is 2. They've added 2, and they removed 3 for parents to drive up and pull in. And I'm glad they repurposed those parking places, but they did in fact take away 3 parking places that are full every day. So right now I'm at -1 parking places. So if something happens, the Cohane's house is separated from the project, which I would love to see. We don't have those 4 parking places. So that issue still needs to be addressed here. I also wanted to say that I heard Sam say that we are not going up in the building. So I'm wondering why the story poles over the domes are about 10 feet higher than the current domes. I also heard somebody say that they're abiding by all of the setback rules, variances, blah, blah, blah. The domes are moving over to touch the Cohane's property. I don't see a side yard setback when you're touching the property line. That's 0 setback. The last thing I want to say is I am against the rezoning of 5164 Paradise Drive. We live in a low-density neighborhood. The Simons bought their house in a low-density neighborhood, and they have single-family dwellings on both sides of them. On the other side of their neighbor's house, the house the Cohanes used to have, was a preschool when they bought their house. It had about 60 children and 3 to 4 teachers there. That school, Marin Montessori, has grown tremendously to what it is today. The Cohanes bought the house next to the school, not the Simons. Yes, the Simons still have their house in a low-density, beautiful neighborhood, but now they have the threat of a large school taking over the house next door. Put yourself in their shoes, or their house, however you want to look at that. The Simons can never replace the peace and privacy they stand to lose if you vote for this rezoning and turning the house next door into a school. This decision has long-term consequences. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Franny Pope Homan, and I live at 3 Park Place, just up the hill. I tried to get as many neighbors as I could who did not go to Marin Montessori, so getting a hold of them was tough. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Their names are on here. I gave them this letter. They all supported it and asked me on their behalf to read it. The absence of the other neighbors doesn't mean that they don't support it. It means I couldn't get a hold of them. There was one neighbor that didn't support it, and they said, well, we're friends with one of the other people that are opposed, so we feel like we can't. That was the only opposition I got. So, we, the neighbors of Marin Montessori, have never had children attend MMS, but as their neighbors, we fully support their proposal to convert the structures on 5164 Paradise Drive into classrooms for elementary children and to replace their domes classroom with a modernized one. Their project will benefit our neighborhood by taking more cars off the road and by establishing a highly stable, aesthetically pleasing, and very quiet environment on the property. We agree with Corte Madera's general plan that allows schools in residential neighborhoods. As neighbors, we also support this project because it will guarantee a quiet and stable neighborhood. Again, this is a very quiet school. Since the school is closed evenings, weekends, holidays, and summer, the property will likely be silent for more than half of the days of every year. MMS has proven over and over again to be a considerate and vital addition to the area. Among other things, there are many community outreach activities in which the students and parents participate, from clearing the invasive French broom on Ring Mountain, which me and my kids did, to singing carols at the Redwoods Retirement Community. We are proud to live in a community that supports education and schools, and we fully support Marin Montessori's effort to be an even better school for its students. Their project will improve our neighborhood at the same time. Danny and Lena Arsenal, 19 Cibrian Drive. Tom and Diane Lee, 10 Cibrian Drive. John and Candace Hanley, 1 Park Place. Paul and Ellie Stein, 4 Cibrian Drive. Bill and Susan Hendrickson, 5 Park Place. Charles D. and Patricia S. Hartman, 12 Cibrian Drive. And none of them went to MMS.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jack Cohane, and my wife, Kay, who's around here somewhere, back in the corner. We bought the property at 5164 in 1991. And we were fully aware when we bought the house that the next door neighbor was Marin Montessori School. We were somewhat apprehensive about what it might be like to live next to a school. However, over the 25 years that we've lived there, we actually have found that school, particularly Marin Montessori School, is actually the perfect next door neighbor because there's no one there in the evenings, there's no one there on the weekends, there's no one there in the summer. They don't have loud parties with music, and it's been a delight living next door to them. So, you know, their current footprint encompasses, I would say, 500 or 600 feet of frontage on Paradise Drive, and this will increase their footage by 100 feet. So I personally don't feel that this will have any impact, plus or minus, on property values. I think it'll decrease the impact on the neighborhood because of all the mitigations that there are being proposed, and so I'm hoping that the town council will find positively for making this change. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kay Cohane, and I was one of the owners at 5164 Paradise Drive, and I just wanted to mention that when we lived there, Jim and Hildy Simon mentioned that they did not want us to put a second story on our home and block their view corridor. So we took that into consideration, and we did not put a second story on our home, even though my husband really wanted to do that and regretted that we didn't do that. And so I think in many ways this will safeguard their view corridor, because if we have a small home, and many families who looked at the home to buy it didn't think it was big enough, and that would be the first thing they would do, would be go up. They could go up 2-3 stories. Many of the homes along Paradise Drive are 2-3 stories high, and there's nothing to stop someone from doing that. So I think in many ways this preserves something that's very important to the neighborhood, that it's not blocking their view of Mount Tam.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Bartels, and I'm here on behalf of a colleague of mine who couldn't attend this evening and is a resident of Corte Madera. Dear Corte Madera Town Council members, I am writing to you today as an 18-year resident of Corte Madera, 12 years at 7 Harbor Drive, and 6 years at 61 Pixley Avenue in regards to this expansion project. I'm a parent of 2 sons who have not attended the school but know the school well because I'm an avid cyclist and ride frequently on Paradise Drive. I'm also a builder at Red Horse Constructors in San Rafael, and therefore well-versed in reading plans and understanding building and planning measures. As a longtime neighbor to MMS, as well as MCDS and the Cove School, I've seen how all properties are respectful with traffic during school hours, exhibit a priority for safety, and bring more homeowners with children to the neighborhood. When we first moved into our home, there were no families on our block, and now our street is filled with families, and we enjoy the impact on our immediate community that has had. I fully support this proposal to convert the structures at 5164 Paradise Drive into classrooms for elementary children and replace the domed classrooms with a modernized one to improve the quality of the children's learning environment and create a cohesive design at the campus. Not only will this guarantee a continuation of the weekend, evening, holiday, and summer quiet presence and continue to bring more families to our neighborhood, but will also improve the congestion and traffic flow during peak school hours because of the added parking and drop-off space this renovation will provide without adding to the enrollment or staffing numbers. I strongly recommend moving forward with this project to keep Corte Madera a town that supports education, internationally recognized schools, and continues to welcome new families to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor First, council members. My name's Bruce Price. I'm a parent of a junior high student and also hopefully next year an upper L student. But more importantly, I'm speaking as a recent homeowner living in Mariner Green. And with that, I have to be very concerned with property values. And with that in mind, I'm strongly supportive of this project. MMS was an integral part of our decision to buy. It was mentioned in my MLS ad. It's one of the showcases of Corte Madera. And also it has to be updated. The domes flood, specialists are working under stairs. There's nowhere for the kids when it rains. They have weathered facilities. It really does need an updating. The fact that they're improving the school without increasing student enrollment or the staff numbers, and the fact that they're reducing off-campus parking, and we're able to do it from finding the home next door is an incredibly fortuitous opportunity that I can't imagine how they could have done otherwise. Also, I would want to just say something about the process that's been followed here. This has been my first experience with the town council, and I compliment the council with how careful they've been with these studies and reviews. Just reading over today, the noise studies, the parking study, the light study, the impact study, there's been an amazing amount of due diligence that's been done. And the number of mitigation requirements that the council's imposed shows how careful the council's been, and I would also say how responsive MMS has been, and it gives me confidence in having bought here. Seeing the voluntary agreement to fund the crosswalk further shows me what a partnership exists between MMS and Corte Madera. To me, this process has been a model for how a huge and important improvement to our town occurs. And I thank the council for all the time and energy they put into the process. It's really been exciting for me to watch how careful everyone has been throughout this process, and gives me great confidence in having bought here, and I really look forward to the changes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carla Condon, 5132 Paradise Drive. I too have never seen traffic circulation as light as was shown in the particular video. I support the school. However, I do not support the expansion into 5164 Paradise. Since their first expansion in '03, the traffic has become untenable on Paradise Drive, to say the least, in the morning and the afternoon. I support the school. I appreciate how many parents have come to support it. However, they don't live there. And to live there and not be able to get out of your driveway in the morning or get back into your driveway in the afternoon, or, as I mentioned to Mr. Shapiro, to watch a little boy run up Paradise Drive because his mother was waiting for the queue, and I guess said, come up and meet me instead of waiting to come in the parking circle, was just an accident ready to happen. Montessori can't be responsible for the parents' behavior. However, it is just an example of how overcrowded that school has become. Since the '03 project, the enrollment cap has been changed twice. I never heard about it. I'm on the list to be notified. It never came up to the council, and I've been sitting on the council since '01, and yet the school continues to grow. We're told that there's a cap, which is even more than what they have right now. It's been horrible ever since the '03 expansion, and I would recommend that the council consider looking back at that and doing what actually Marin Country Day did by reducing their enrollment cap, because this is just really so dangerous, and unfortunately, we've already seen things happen. As far as keeping promises, I saw in the audience, I thought I saw Mr. Anciano, who, there you are, who I met during the '03 expansion proposal. And he came to my house, looked out, came to an agreement that there would be these trees planted to block the view of the buildings from my house. Now we're talking 14 years later, still no trees. I went and showed Mr. Shapiro, and he said, well, that wasn't on the landscape plan. Well, what wasn't on the landscape plan was the removal of the existing trees. And so in 14 years, am I up?
3 minutes are up.
Oh, rats. Well, anyway, in closing, I just really hope that we can keep the neighborhood the way it is, keep it safe. And I'm sorry that I didn't have 100 signatures of people that I could bring tonight that would support our feeling on Paradise Drive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mila Rife, and I'm here on behalf of my friends, Lisa and Anthony Vidagas, who sent in this letter on October the 24th, and they live at 4525 Paradise Drive. Dear Town Council members, we are writing today in support of Marin Montessori School's expansion project on Paradise Drive. As longtime residents on Paradise Drive, we find all aspects of this project acceptable and appropriate. We drive this road multiple times a day and have done so for years. We have recently noticed less cars on Paradise Drive next to Marin Montessori School and an ease in the traffic around drop-off and pick-up time. The traffic concerns that were addressed in their proposal and the added parking only help their efforts to be less noticed on the road during school hours, which is enormously appreciated by us. While we have never had children attend this school, we are very much in favor of this campus bettering itself for the health and wellness of the children and their families. We have never felt inconvenienced by their presence, only very pleased with the good citizens that they are rearing to contribute to our society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, May 1st, City Council members. My name is Dr. Alex Kashef. I'm a local business owner in Corte Madera. And this is Ava Kashef. She insisted on coming to the city tonight. That's what she kept saying, because I told her all day what is happening tonight. We're very proud that Ava's at Marin Montessori. She just started a few months ago. What I want to do is I want to take a step back and share my story and why it's so important to our family. I was born in Tehran, Iran in 1973, and being born a Baha'i, which is a persecuted religion, we moved out in '79 when the revolution occurred, and mostly because we had no chance for education in that country. Shortly after we fled, Baha'is were persecuted and killed, and my uncle was actually thrown in jail for many, many years. We came to the U.S., I went to school, I got a dental degree, I got a medical degree, I did my surgical training, and now I'm very privileged to be able to serve Marin County and have my practice just down the road. one of the things that's very, very important is education. And, it's very interesting that we lived in a privileged society here that we're actually arguing about a school. My uncle, who, when he was in the ICU before he passed away, one of the things he shared with me was he opened a lot of schools around Africa. Back then for about $1,000, you could open a 2 or 3 room shack, and basically it was a school. And he said one of his best memories was going back to these schools, and the kids would run around and thank him and, go through his legs. And, everybody would be so happy that he did that. It's really such an amazing difference what he did back then with what my own daughter is able to do here. And I just want to share with you, I thank you for looking at this project. I know how involved these can be, but I also want you to know that these schools do make a difference. And so our family fully supports this project, but we are biased because we do have a daughter at the school. But I really think schools are important for the community, and we are a member of this community, and we're very happy to support this project. Thank you. Say thank you, Ava.
Thank you.
Mayor first, members of the council, my name is Tony Anziano. My family lives at 10 Paloma Drive here in Corte Madera. We've lived in Corte Madera for over 26 years. You've got a pretty detailed letter from me already, and you heard from me last time, so I don't think I really need to add to that. I probably should address the comments made by Ms. Condon, although I believe that has been discussed at least at prior Planning Commission meetings. There were trees planted in accordance with the landscaping plan for the project back in 2003, in which I was involved, and they didn't do very well. It's a tough environment out there with the salt water immediately adjacent to the bay, and 2 of the trees, as I understand it, did not do very well. They didn't mature, but it has become an issue, and there are steps that have been undertaken by Montessori to make sure that new trees are planted that will do better in the future, that are more tolerant to the situation that they have out there. With that, I think I would just simply, again, just indicate my very, very strong support for this project. It is a wonderful world-class school, and we are incredibly fortunate to have that in our town here. With that, and again, in the interest of time, I would just like to ask those in the audience that are in support of the project to please stand up rather than adding to the parade here.
You're
And
to be addressing us, but I.
oh, understood.
Thank you.
Understood. With that, that's all I have. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Last chance. All right, I will close public comment. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
And it's probably to, I don't know, Adam, or maybe one of you guys know the answer. It's what Mr. Reed.
Mike, please.
Oh, sorry. It's, I just have a technical question about what Mr. Reed brought up. The setback issue, are setbacks complied with, number one? And secondly, is there an increase in the height? I didn't check that issue this time. I feel like we may have gone over this in the past, but can you comment on what's the story with the height? And then finally, can you clarify whose math is right here? Is there a net addition, or is it a net addition presuming that there's a rezoning and the property is included in? Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's go. I'll start with the parking one first. So prior to this project, they have 37 parking spaces on site. They're required by the code to have 35.
Can everybody hear what he's saying? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay. They're required by code to have 35 parking spaces. They have 37 employees, so they had 1 for 1 essentially. Part of their proposal is 4 spaces. Originally it was 3 spaces, then the Planning Commission asked for 1 more. So they have 4 spaces on the residential property for a total of 41. Then after the first council, you asked them to get 2 at least, maybe 3, which they did with those, removing 2 parallel to create 4 head-in, addition of 2 more for 43 total spaces. Of those 43 spaces, they are designating 3 spaces for during the daytime temporary visitor parking. Now, that could be an employee that comes for a period of time, that could be a parent that's dropping something off, that could be somebody that's visiting the school. It's meant to be a non-all-day parking space like some of the others that they've designated. So currently 37, proposed 43. Of those 43, they are allocating throughout the day parking. So it's not, I think the math was trying to indicate that those three remove essentially all-day parking spaces. It's up to you to sort of suss that out, I guess.
Okay.
With regards to the setbacks, I believe that the commenter's talking about the new proposed upper elementary building will be encroaching on the residential parcel property line. But because the applicant owns both parcels, essentially the town would require them to do either a lot line adjustment or a parcel merger or something to that effect, so that they would be in compliance. I guess theoretically, if this project was denied, there might be some sort of code enforcement action that would require them, if they were to build one property, one part of the project, but not be able to do the other, then they would have to do a lot line adjustment or something, something to that effect.
And then the height.
And then the height, I believe the domes are somewhere around 20, 22 feet, and I think the proposal is 22, 23 feet. So, I mean, it might be, maybe the commenter's talking about, because the domes, maybe visually it looks like it's higher because the domes don't have like a corner spacing, but I'm pretty sure that it's within sort of the massing of all the other buildings. It's not a full story or 10 feet taller than the other buildings out
And
there.
do you guys go out there and like measure to see if the story poles are erected correctly? I feel like we've had this issue for
The
other
applicant is required to submit a certification
Declarations,
letter
yeah.
from an engineer.
Okay. Thank you for answering those questions. Thank you, Diane.
Any other questions? No? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we will bring it back for discussion and consideration. Who wants to start?
Okay. I will say it was a very persuasive presentation. I frankly was persuaded. I mean, I'm curious to hear what you folks have to say, but one of the things that had really jumped out at me at first was the almost uniform opposition by the immediate neighbors, and I know that the immediate neighbors still have issues with it, but some of the larger community concerns, I think, were sussed out, in a genuine way by the applicant, and they made a real effort to respond to the concerns regarding parking and pedestrian safety. So I can find, if you do sort of a straw vote, I tend to be inclined in favor of this. I think their attitude is also right. There is that commitment to the community. We appreciate the respect they show us by coming in, and all the parents and the other community members on both sides of the issue. Everybody shows great respect for this council and for this town. I'm grateful. The council's grateful. Thank you for an informed debate in a way that sometimes it's not quite so. The pitchforks come out a little more, obviously, sometimes. So we appreciate that, and I wish we could make it perfect for everybody, but part of our position is to do the best we can under the circumstances. So on balance, I tend to find myself in favor of the project.
Thank you. Down here.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Bailey, and I first off would like to thank everyone who participated this evening. Again, a really civil and good, public engagement process, because they don't always come out that way. I did find it also extremely persuasive. I especially found the testimony of the Cahanes very persuasive. One of the harder issues for me on this is the effect on the Simons. I am concerned about that, and I have been wrestling with that as I've been listening to all of you speak. Clearly, the school does amazing things for the community. Clearly, it's a part of our community, and it will, the improvements and the things you are doing to try to make this work, and the boundaries, the ways you have tried to make it work and all the different things you've done have pushed me over the edge, and I can also support this project. I do think it is really important, and I appreciate the consideration for the safety crossing, the pedestrian crossing, I think, or the left-hand turn pocket, if that indeed is the right place for it. I'm not sure if it is on Paradise Drive, but I think that's really important because that has become a much larger issue, and it's going to continue to become a much larger issue down there, that we need to really improve safety for the current residents, but also for the students and everyone who's dropping people off. But in general, yes, I can make the findings to support this as well.
Thank you. Jim?
I can as well.
Okay. I think it's going to be unanimous. I did want to just say a few things. First of all, I agree with my fellow council members. I think it was a very persuasive presentation. I appreciate the efforts that the school community has made to be good neighbors. I think going above and beyond by offering things like the noise monitoring to ensure that the impact on the neighbors is not, it does not affect them too greatly, is an indication of the fact that you do consider the impacts to your neighbors. I believe the R1 neighborhoods are appropriate for schools. That is how, in the suburbs, we have done it. We have always put the schools in the R1 neighborhoods. So I just can't consider that this isn't appropriate as long as, we are taking the steps we need to ensure the health and safety and well-being of the neighborhood is considered. I appreciate also the school community offering to help out with the cost of installing the new crosswalk. I also would like to see that rapid flash beacon type signal. I think they have worked really well out here on Tamalpais Drive, and I'm eager to see it out on Paradise. We've got another one planned for Paradise and Prince Royal that you should be seeing in the coming months, I hope. So, with that, shall we?
Well, I'll make a motion. Before that, let me just call out and thank Dr. Alex for, shaking me out of my own stupor a little bit here. We spend an enormous amount of time on this council and in the groups that we go to dealing with land use and traffic issues every day. And they're serious issues that affect our lives and our community every day. But, there are other things that happen in our lives that are bigger and in the world about us. And I want to appreciate reminding us sometimes how privileged we are to be here. So thank you for sharing that with us. Anyway, with that, there's like 4 or 5 motions we have to make, right?
Okay, so this is what I have, and
I got it, Diana, I think.
okay. Go for it.
So I guess the first thing is that we'll move that we approve the initial study and mitigated negative declaration. Right?
Wait, motion and a second?
There's 3 resolutions. I thought instead of, is it better to do it by number? So can I simultaneously adopt 3 resolutions by motion? It's resolutions 43-2017, 44-2017, and 45-2017.
We would recommend that you go with the motion for approval of the resolution regarding the initial study first, and then
Okay.
go ahead subsequent to that and approve those.
Wait,
So-
initial study or the mitigated negatives?
It's yes, initial study / mitigated negative declaration.
Which is 43-2017, is that?
That's
okay?
correct.
So that's the first motion to adopt resolution 43-2017, which is approving the initial study and mitigated negative declaration.
Second?
What, did I get it wrong?
No, still didn't get it right? Come on, Flo.
I'm following the recommendation.
No, I'm sorry, it's 45.
You're
I'm
the
sorry, I
attorney
apologize.
I'm like
Here,
reading
come
it
on.
verbatim, okay?
It's 45.
Thank you.
I didn't help you out here, Sloan. That's 45 / 2017.
45-2017.
Thank
Do
you, Adam,
amend
I
your
will remember
motion?
that.
Are you amending your motion?
So let's make a fresh motion to adopt resolution 45-2017, approving the initial study and mitigated negative declaration.
Second.
Now we'll vote.
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Condon. Mayor First.
Yes.
So, Adam, the general plan amendment is which one? 44 or 43? Okay, I would move that we adopt resolution 44-2017, which is the general plan amendment.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Condon. Mayor First.
Yes.
So, thirdly, I'll move that we adopt resolution 43-2017, which is approving the conditional use permit amendment and the design, is that different? The design review is a different thing, right?
It's together on this
Okay,
one,
and the
yes.
design review application for the new buildings, modifications to the existing buildings and associated site work.
All right. Now, do
Yes.
we need to add anything onto here about the crosswalk?
Yes, we would recommend that you do add a condition of approval here. It could state that the applicant has expressed a desire, and I assume you're talking about the contribution, that the applicant has expressed a desire to contribute funds to the town for the purpose of providing a crosswalk at Paradise Drive in Upland, or as deemed the proper location with town staff. And we would recommend that that would be conditioned on some point in time, whether it's by the time that we, prior to building permit approvals, or condition, occupancy, and at the town council's discretion on that, where that contribution would be paid to the town.
Teresa, can you give me specific language that I
Sorry,
should use?
I think we can add in that the applicant has expressed a desire to contribute funds to the town for the purpose of providing a crosswalk at or near Upland and Paradise Drive. Based on this offer of the applicant, prior to issuance of
Building permit,
occupancy.
Or, this is going to need some design and everything. Do you think occupancy? Building permit's probably going to come quicker than the crosswalk. So I would say occupancy.
Prior to issuance of any certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall pay to the town the sum of $50,000 to be placed in the traffic improvement fund to be used for installation of the crosswalk.
Now, the only question I would have is, does this mean that we can go ahead and start moving forward on the crosswalk before the funds are used? And should there be something in there? I'm hearing whispers about fair share.
Right, so what I heard tonight was that they would be willing to pay up to $50,000 or their fair share, and so we have some work to do with that.
Okay.
And so,
Could we simply say up to, and we'll figure out the details later? Would that be?
I would recommend adding some language at the end, picking up where I left off.
Rebecca, are you
Provided-
getting this? Because I'm not going to be able to repeat this. What I'm going to do at the end of it is say, "So moved."
What I would suggest, and we should make sure that this works for the school, is to add to the end of what I just said, provided town staff concludes that the $50,000 does not exceed the school's fair share of the crosswalk installation.
Are we happy with that?
Yep.
So moved.
Second.
So again, this is resolution number 43/2017 with the changes that Teresa has just dictated.
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Condon. Mayor First.
Yes.
And finally, I'll move that we introduce the rezoning ordinance for the Marin Montessori School for the property located at 5164 Paradise Drive.
This is ordinance number 970.
Okay?
Yes?
Whatever you say.
That's what I have down here.
Great.
Then I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Motion from Sloan, second from Bob, to introduce ordinance number 970 to rezone.
Councilmember Andrews.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Condon. Mayor First.
Yes. Thank you all. I think that takes care of it.
Let's move on.
All right. Why don't we take a couple of minutes recess? Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order again. Thank you all. Let's move on to business item 6.1.1, a presentation by our Vice Mayor Carla Condon regarding a proposed intergenerational center.
Okay, they all go stand up there, so I.
Absolutely. Do you want me to do pointer if we need it?
Okay, Anna White, get up there. Get up there.
Okay, I've taken my 3 deep breaths from the last item. And this one I'm really excited about. And I hope that when you hear the ultimate proposal, that everybody else will be excited. And anybody out in TV land that is watching, I hope that you will enjoy this and look upon it well. Not long ago, our age-friendly Corte Madera, when it first began, it became obvious to us that the town had a critical gap, and that was in programming and services for 25% of our population, the seniors. And in addition to that, also there were lack of services for the younger children, and this wasn't the fault of Park and Rec. This isn't to blame Park and Rec staff, but instead it's largely the result of the fact that we have the absence of a place to put these programs. Our historic community center is beloved by most Corte Maderans, but it lacks the adequate facilities and separate spaces recommended for these such activities. What Corte Madera really needs is an intergenerational center. Age-friendly Corte Madera has been planning and researching since its beginning in 2014. And we wanted to create an intergenerational center to resolve these program deficiencies. Our first thing that we thought would be the perfect site was the theater. And I'd been talking with the vice president of Cinemark for quite a long time back in Plano, Texas, and he knew what we were trying to do. And he said, you know, we might get an offer. And we said, well, just don't accept anything until, you know, we raise money. Well, we didn't, it was too premature for us. And so just after Christmas, a couple of years ago, the phone rang, and it was the vice president, and he said, the town doesn't even know this yet, but we accepted an offer from Scandinavian Designs. I was crushed. But at any rate, it was just the perfect site. But then a suggestion of a possible location was presented to us, which seemed absolutely perfect. Now, the trick of this whole thing is that the town owns the land. Now, backtracking, why we need an intergenerational center. You'll see up here logos. There's been comprehensive research done throughout the country. These are only a few of the universities. But the research has come up with empirical results that show that a vibrant intergenerational center has inestimable benefits for all ages. And we've got up there Penn State, University of Pittsburgh, Brown, Temple University, Ohio State's College of Medicine, Duke University, University of Missouri, Berkeley, Stanford, and so on. New Stanford research shows that aging adults play critical roles in the lives of young people, especially the most vulnerable in society. Volunteering is one way to bring older adults and young people together. The key is to change social norms to encourage relationship building between generations. Now, Forbes even came out with a series of articles on why we should get rid of senior centers. And that was actually the title of their articles, why we should get rid of them. And it was in support of intergenerational centers. Recently, there was a segment on the Today Show also promoting intergenerational centers. And this is amazing, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca.
Do you have any kids? Do you have no. Do you have any children? No. I got 3, of course. Chewing on. No, not 3 new ones. Stop it.
Can you hear it?
Stop it. Great story today. The Bethlehem Intergenerational Care Center. This is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They're one of several centers that are taking a different approach to daycare. This facility combines both the young children and the elderly under one roof. Each day, the 2 very different generations come together to take part in shared activities. The center was developed after a year of researching this concept. Social media seems to be taking to the idea. A couple of posts, we saw a wonderful thing for the community, children and older adults. Brenda adding the young and the young at heart. Love this. We asked you on Twitter, what do you think about the idea of shared care center for elderly and children? Overwhelmingly, about 80% of you say this is a nice combination. And one of the center's nurses says it doesn't matter if you're 7 or 70, it's just heartwarming to see a smile. Nice story. You'll like that here sometimes on the show when both Matt and Dylan
Okay. Then also, the studies came up with a lot of these things. What the good things, the advantages are of an intergenerational center. For seniors, active participation is essential to quality of life, reduces depression, reduces cognitive decline, enhances social connectiveness, contributes to healthy aging, improves physical dexterity. Statistics show it reduces vulnerability to falls. You perform better on memory tests, may become less reliant on canes or walkers. And you'll see something like that on another slide or on another little video. Creates a sense of purpose, provides opportunity to teach, tutor special skills, provides mentoring and nurturing, positive effect among older adults with dementia, and an enhanced feeling of self-worth. Now, for the youth, some of these things I thought were really pretty remarkable. Okay, 1, learn to develop social relationships, improve communication skills, increase problem-solving abilities, develop positive attitudes towards aging, perform community service. And then these statistics, I think, were really very profound. 46% of those that have activities in an intergenerational type of atmosphere are less likely to begin using illegal drugs, 27% less likely to begin using alcohol, and 52% less likely to skip school. The kids can gain positive role models with whom they can interact. They learn to accept handicaps. They have increased self-esteem, improved behavior, receive wisdom from elders, learn traditions, improve reading scores, gain appreciation for older people, and have an enhanced sense of belonging in their communities. Now, on behalf of Age Friendly, we see the vital need for a full-size intergenerational center. But we understand the need to start small with a mini intergenerational center, to start programming as soon as possible, so the need will be apparent that we need to significantly expand. And so what we really are proposing that we can have with our mini center, that we can show you a proof of concept so that the whole community will buy into this. Thanks to Diane, we have here. This is our secret place.
Take the mic.
What we're doing here.
Carla,
Oh, you've got one. Okay, good. That we are capturing the Park and Rec offices, and we will transport them and then reconfigure that space with movable walls. So, and then we can flip to see some of the options. See here, we can get, they're not huge, but we can get separate little classrooms. And then and then here, we can even maybe squeeze in a couple of desks and a game table or something, but it's enough room that it can be a space for people to walk into from the outside and be greeted. Then here shows an example of where the wall is opened up and we can double the room size. Oh, okay. On site for a full-fledged intergenerational center, there would be ample room in the future for a wing for young children, a section for seniors, a place for teens, with programs designed at specific times to integrate all ages. To picture the future full-size intergenerational center, just imagine child care for preschoolers combined with a specially designed senior program. And here you can see it.
Generations together and on the health and happiness of the elderly. I can't urge you making any great difference to us. What do you think happens to you when you get really old? I think you go. Oh, excellent, Mary. Old People's Home for 4-year-olds, Tuesday and Wednesday at 9 on Channel 4.
There is one portion, if I were to play this on, where they're having a race with the egg on a spoon. And you see the kids running to the older people with the egg and the spoon. Then the seniors grab the egg and run in the other direction. Well, going back the other way, one of the little ones has the lady's walker, and she's running with the walker, and the elderly person is making her way through the lawn area with a spoon, but the other kid's racing with her walker. It was really humorous. Another thing that can be done actually right now in a small center is gardening or planting, where the older adults can plant seeds with the young ones, or even have some kind of a little community garden together. The seniors can read stories to the young children or help kids with their reading. Sharing meals together is oftentimes something that a lot of people really enjoy. The teens showing elders how to operate computers, smartphones, iPads, and tablets, and then those students getting credit. Like, for example, at Redwood, they could get credit from school for community service. And here's an example of that.
Is there anything you would want to learn from the internet? Could you explain a bit about this Facebook something and having to be a friend? I typed in www.email.com. Have you heard of YouTube? Yes, I've heard of it, but I have no clue as to what it means. How many people here have used a computer? We have some teenage volunteers who are willing to teach you how to use the internet. you go to school. Hope you have lots of patience, young man. Did you ever write on Facebook? Do you remember how to get there?
Well, I think I just, no.
I never even dreamed about it. I love it. Welcome to a whole new world of information.
Every time we're together, sure just wants to watch cooking tutorials.
Okay, was that it, Rebecca?
Hello, YouTube. Hello, YouTube.
Oh.
Today we are talking about child music. Million Netherlands is beating mine. I need more hits on YouTube. This is the big. Megan said thanks to people who taught you.
You're welcome. Love you. You see a program like this, and I think it's an opportunity to get in touch with their grandkids and to communicate.
No matter how old we are, we do need a purpose for getting up in the morning.
Okay, so that's another program that we can easily do, and we have the kids, ample kids, to provide that service. Sadly, isolation has become the new tobacco, and it has a profound negative effect on one's health and well-being. And combating isolation through social opportunities is a goal of many of the programs offered. Building relationships among all ages benefits all ages. There is indeed a commonality between the ages, which brought to mind a Shel Silverstein poem. The little boy and the old man. Said the little boy, "Sometimes I drop my spoon." Said the old man, "I do too." The little boy whispered, "I wet my pants." "I do that too," laughed the old man. Said the little boy, "I often cry." The old man nodded, "So do I." But worst of all, said the little boy, "it seems grown-ups don't pay attention to me." And he felt the warmth of the wrinkled old hand. "I know what you mean," said the old man. And we'd like to try to get away from that. In the full-scale intergenerational center, there will be a large room available for special events that didn't require the size of our existing rec center. From the outset, at the mini intergenerational center, we have the opportunity to generate income. Patty is here today, and we went and visited with one of the directors of Marin Space, who informed us that there's a high demand from nonprofits to have desk space in Southern Marin to provide local access to vital organizations and services. At the same time, it creates a revenue stream for the intergenerational center with minimal to no overhead expenses to the town. So that's one way that we could actually derive a little income. The programs. The Corte Madera Intergenerational Center will build relationships among all ages, enriching our lives with a wide range of quality programs for all ages. The Intergenerational Center will be geared to prevent social isolation for seniors, provide a wider array of programs for all ages, and become a resource for badly needed quality yet reasonable daycare. Now, when you see all the programs that we have been looking into, and many of them, we have even been given referrals of people that could conduct some of these classes. We've got yoga, technology, computer classes, chair yoga, chair dancing, movement, horticulture, community garden, raised gardens, oil or watercolor painting, pottery, jewelry making, memoir writing, which is really a big draw for a lot of people. Preschool daycare, there's never enough of that. Book club, photography, genealogy, drama, bridge, mahjong, ping pong. Preschool daycare, book club, photography, drama, bridge, we already have mahjong, chess, ping pong, help with homework, storytelling, sports, art appreciation, trips and tours, cooking, hip-hop dancing, ballroom dancing, music, foreign languages, nutrition, wellness, financial literacy, and more. Even probably a time when people can come and get blood pressure check or have their health monitored. Now, age-friendly solutions. Age-friendly Corte Madera established age-friendly solutions. It is a 501c3 nonprofit, tax-deductible organization completely apart from the town of Corte Madera. It has already received a small grant toward the initial development of the conceptual plan for the intergenerational center. People are really, when they hear what we want to do, it seems that pockets seem to open. We've identified resources, including the state, that are very receptive to financially assist in the building of an intergenerational center. We have the backing of Dennis Rodoni, our supervisor, who not only supports the idea of building the intergenerational center, but he's also willing to work with us in getting funding for the project. Some of the other sources of finance, tax override funds, the Board of Supervisors, I've spoken to Damon Connolly about this. He was very enthusiastic, and in 2018, the Board of Supervisors will be honoring the seniors in Marin County. We would look to the Marin Community Foundation, private donations, private grants, state and federal grants. I'm going to get back to the TOT, cost recovery, nonprofit rentals, and a community development block grant. Now, interestingly, the tranche and occupancy tax in Corte Madera is one of the lowest in the county. And if we were to just raise the TOT a little bit, doesn't have to be a lot, but enough to generate some money, it would offset where we might have a possibility of developing a big one in the future. So it's something that to consider. Now, Ralph Marchese is here today, and Ralph is one of our age-friendly task force members, and you'll see he's on the steering committees. He's also on the Commission on Aging, our district representative, former chair of the Corte Madera Planning Commission, and he is the owner of Marchese Company. And Ralph is a developer by profession and has built many large projects in the Bay Area. He has developed the master plan for the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, multiple projects for CPMC, California Pacific Medical Center, and the Archdiocese of San Francisco. In addition, Ralph manages the owner's participation in the land use and rezoning process of St. Vincent's School for Boys in Marin. And these are just a few of the many significant projects Ralph has undertaken in recent years. Ralph has the knowledge and connections to guide the development of Corte Madera's Intergenerational Center. Now we just need you, the council, and our community's engagement to make this a reality. Age Friendly is ready to start. We are right at the gate to start with the mini intergenerational center by way of repurposing the Park and Rec staff office space. As the larger space becomes available down the road, we have the vision of a large center with multiple rooms for a wide array of activities, a teen lounge, large reception room with a complete kitchen. Now, with the council's support tonight and approval, Age Friendly is prepared to develop and implement exciting new programming together with our Park and Rec department as early as the beginning of 2018. Age-Friendly Solutions is ready to write grant requests, solicit donations, and partner with the town to get the word out that something great is coming to Corte Madera. Successful aging is more likely when individuals are actively engaged in life, and an intergenerational center is one of the most accessible, friendly, and inexpensive places that offer programs and services that promote active engagement and enjoyment of life for older adults, children, and residents of all ages. Are there any questions? Sloan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Carla. I missed what the plan, what would happen to our Parks and Rec staff?
Okay, Todd, can I defer that to you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So what we're looking at is the current office space, and we, in working with Mario and his staff, we believe that by low-cost renovations, they would stay in that office space, but they would move farther down. Let me show you, see if I can show you.
That one.
There.
So currently, Park and Rec, this is Mario's office in the corner, and then this whole area is right now dedicated to Park and Rec staff. So with the help of the mayor, and great job on this at 12:30 at night.
By the way, Classroom 1 exists.
Yeah, this currently
But I don't
exists.
think it is ever used, right?
It's,
Oh, Spanish? Okay.
so these are the two spaces we were going to encroach on in the office space for Park and Rec, and add this space here. With this space, these are 16 by 16 kind of spaces. This space can actually open up into a 32 by 16 space. Park and Rec staff, and talking to Mario, one of the things we really focused on is we have 2 full-time staff members in Park and Rec, and then we have a handful of part-time at any given point. The max staffing at any given point would be 3 to 4 people at any given time. And so we looked at this space, and in talking to Mario, we're really looking at the team concept, going away from isolating people in offices and having his team together at any given time. And so we believe this is sufficient office space currently for Mario and his staff. If we were very successful and we had our programs were fully, we had full registrations and we had a lot of positive response to these programs, it is possible, and again, we would come back to council and we would look at possibly adding this space also to our programming. And there's a possibility of moving a modular space into, do we have the footprint of?
You can go to the previous slide.
The community center, and I'll show you. So right here, so currently, this is the back side, the west side of the community center where we have our garden. This is where the porta potties are right now for soccer. We're looking at this space here where you could actually move Park and Rec staff into portables where they're hidden. They don't encroach on the park. You have a tree, you have foliage, and it would protect, I think with a decent design, there's some modulars now that don't look like trailers, they look like modulars. We could actually put and support our staff here. And so it adds some opportunity for us. Right now, we're not recommending that because we want to look at this and we're considering, we want this to be low cost. We want to be able to do this as soon as possible and start evaluating it. But if we were successful, this is a possibility for us. Again, anything that we do, we're going to go through the Park and Rec Commission, get their feedback first before it comes to council. We're really looking at this opportunity now for council. We're asking for 2 things, really. One, every time we see the vice mayor in public in a council meeting, she's so excited, and her enthusiasm just shows about this, and it's infectious. And the team of Age-Friendly Corte Madera, I know Patty and Ralph are here. It really inspired us to kind of look at this and really ask council, we think there's a need, we think there's excitement, we think there's some possibilities here. And so one, do you think we're on the right path temporarily in the meantime, immediately, to look at, is there low-cost ways to look at the community center to provide programming? We think there is. Does council agree? And if you do, staff will come back to you pretty immediate with some options with this and put cost to it. The second piece is, if we're successful here, what types of data or information would council need in the future to ever consider the possibility of an intergenerational center. What types of things would you need? And those are things we can work with Age Friendly at the staff level to really put that information together moving forward. And so really those are 2 points that we're asking for some direction from council that would be helpful to us. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Todd. And, but Carla or Todd or somebody, who would, what would be the concept about who would run the intergenerational programs?
Okay, well, it would come under the purview, and jump in if I'm wrong, Park and Rec.
I see.
But Age Friendly would like to support them in helping develop the programs and helping them find people to staff them.
And we currently have within our budget a part-time senior coordinator. We also have funding opportunities for senior and youth programs within the sales tax override. But we believe we can handle that programming and support currently on our current staffing levels through the fiscal year.
Any other questions?
I don't have any questions.
So are you asking for direction?
Members of the public, or?
Yeah, I will
Open it
ask.
up to the public.
Yes, I'm asking for direction. If you would like, if this concept seems reasonable, we still have vetting to do, to direct staff to come back at a future date with the plan and putting, giving you more specifics and putting dollars and cents to this as well.
Got it.
And the second piece is longer term, as we talk about or consider intergenerational center, what types of information would council need? I mean, I'm assuming you would want to know what types of programming, registration, success, numbers, you would need to see that. Is there anything else? Funding sources, opportunities, current facilities. I know, as we talked about at our retreat, we will at some point be discussing our facilities in public meetings, and also the future considerations for our shopping center that we currently own. Is there anything else, direction that council would like to give staff?
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Diane, I'm sorry. Would it be okay if I just ask if Patty or Ralph have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to open it up to public comment.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions first?
No questions.
Okay. Any member of the public like to speak? Thank you, Carla.
Patty Stolier. Is this on? Yes. Age Friendly Corte Madera co-chair. It will come as no surprise to anybody that I strongly encourage the council to help Corte Madera take the lead in innovative planning for a center for all ages, where teens can fulfill the required volunteer hours, perhaps doing a video of someone over 90, or teaching them how to search on the internet, or where a warm and friendly 84-year-old can do a clay sculpture with a 4-year-old. A place where an otherwise isolated senior can drop in and schmooze with Pam, our senior programs coordinator, of course, while working on the ongoing jigsaw puzzle that I require. Or maybe there's a chair yoga class or an outdoor playground geared for participants of any age and any ability. I see a center where maybe attorneys might offer a couple of pro bono hours a week to answer questions, or where a service like Marin Transit or LilyPad or Seniors at Home might staff a desk there on a very limited basis as a convenient resource. Think of all the intergenerational centers that are in the area. 0. We would be groundbreaking to get on the cutting edge of what has become obvious to all the researchers of the way to go. So you know that Corte Madera's Age Friendly Task Force is dedicated to fighting ageism. We developed honoring our nonagenarians and centenarians. We feel the same about combating sedentary isolation. Let's take the first step in improving life across the decades by making this center a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak?
I'm Sally Gillard, and I've been a resident with my family here for about 34 years. Our kids went to the public schools. Our daughter went to Marin Montessori for a while, and in the last bunch of years, I've been working with assisted living communities and a regional director of a group of assisted living communities throughout the Bay Area. And I found in assisted living communities, it's very easy to get volunteers. And in the Bay Area, we get fabulous volunteers. And in Marin, many of our volunteers came from Marin. In Marin, we have amazing talent. So I don't think there'd be any problem to get wonderful people to both facilitate groups, interesting groups, yoga with weights, Sherry Baptiste, who's, world famous, exercise for adults, frail elderly, and adults with special needs. Betsy Best Martini is very well known, teaching the College of Marin, and writes the book for the state for activity coordinators. I mean, we have fantastic resources here, and I've always felt bad that all this wonderful talent was for the assisted living communities. No problem with getting people, but it's not available to people who can't afford to or who choose not to live in assisted living communities, want to live at home. So I really hope, and as a grandma, I would take our grandchild to the library and to the Discovery Museum and to the parks. They're all wonderful, but I think it'd be a great opportunity for the preschoolers to be with the elders. And like somebody said, the high school kids who need the service learning, I mean, we'd get so many school groups at the assisted living communities, and this would also qualify. So I totally support this effort. Very exciting.
Thank you.
I'll say something. I'm here specifically for this session. My name is Christine O'Sullivan. I've been in modular home building for the last 7 years with Blue Homes. I'm thinking of a next step, and because I've got a mother in assisted living and watched her decline, this is something that I'm passionate about. And I'm thinking of making a national model, and I see you as one of the first efforts in this regard. I'd love to help you develop yours, help to bring it to a national level and roll it out. And I know that that's really dreamlike thinking at this point, but we've done it before and it can be done. And I just think you're really on to something. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? All right, see now, let's bring it back for discussion. Who wants to start?
What do we do?
I'll jump.
Well, thoughts, how you would want to proceed, refer to kind of what was presented. All right, Bob?
I think this is a fantastic idea. I cannot thank you enough for bringing this to us, really, and all of you who have helped on this too. This is great. This is exactly the kind of thing we should be doing. I love the idea of being one of the first people anywhere to do this. I think the opportunities are enormous. I think the way you're approaching it is exactly right, which is to start with kind of a test program. We can learn from that. I think the quantitative factors you were looking at, I mean, we need to look at what kind of numbers we can generate, what kind of participation, what kind of age groups. I don't know how you're going to get teenagers there, but God bless you, I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Tell them they can't come.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. But one of the things I've always admired about other cultures is the mix of generations, and we've lost that in this country. And this brings it back, and I think it's great. So whatever we can do to support it, let us know.
Oh, thanks, Bob.
Jim?
I'm in favor of it. At least, the trial at the community center and see how it goes and what the next step would be.
Thank you. Sloan?
Yeah, I think all of us, Carla or whoever, we'd be willing, you want us to make calls to people to participate in the process in any way. I think we'd all jump on board in any way we can. So just that I'm impressed by the way the organization, Patty's usual, good job, and Carla, fantastic. I don't know what it sounds like you've already got sort of a plan. Is it modeled after something you've seen in some other community?
Well, we've done a lot of research, not only just seeing what other communities are doing, but how they reach out, and all that sort of thing. The biggest thing is how positive it is that, I've all along been afraid, what if nobody comes? But it seems that it's just overflowing with participation.
From the uninitiated standpoint, it seemed very big. Like there are lots of moving pieces. If you're going to start a model program of some kind, my own sense of it, without having done anywhere near the research you have, is that it would be good to develop a very specific business plan that begins with, here's the square footage of the space, here's how many programs could reasonably fit into that space over what period of time, here's the number of hours of volunteers we'd have to secure, here's what that costs, Todd. You know what I mean? In other words, the other thing is, in order to advance this to the next level, it would be useful to task a committee, an ad hoc committee, or somebody, maybe yourself, somebody specific, to develop those metrics first. Like that's the first thing, is what is the very specific plan that could be, the subject that could be debated. And then the council or somebody could make suggestions on how to tweak or change or even dramatically change. But I think my own suggestion would be a very specific plan that can then be the foundation on which I think all five of us unanimously bless the concept. But it's too big for me to suggest how do you boil that to the next stage.
Okay, well, I think that part of the, I don't know if you want to say experience, but we've been operating for many months, the third Wednesday speaker series, and we never know if we're going to get 10 people or 60 people. And I think that along with our programming, that we want to come right out of the gate with something that we know is going to be a success. And we've been hashing that around with others to get an idea. A lot of it is going to, I feel, honestly, it's going to be hit or miss. I mean, we have some of these speaker series I think are fascinating, and not that many show up. And then we have one, and I might say, oh, how depressing. And it draws a lot of people.
I'm content. I'm sorry, Diane, I know you want to say something. I'm content to try something and have it fail, because that's how you learn what will work.
Right.
That's not my point is, what's that thing? Like, let's try something. Get it rolling, and then that's how we could learn what does work, right?
Can I just add?
Of course.
I would just approach it slightly differently in that I don't know how long the metrics portion is going to take, and I think we should have somebody working on that, but I would not lose time in generating and experimenting with programming, because I think that's what's going to drive this, is the success of the programming. And I think the sooner you start on that, the sooner you're going to be able to learn what types of programming works, because what may work in another community may not work in ours because of unique demographics and talents that we may have within our community that make it work. So I would start, I'd get ahead with the renovation, and I would start figuring out what kind of programming you're going to have. And just one other thing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but can I ask a question too? Is a lot of this, you were just talking about a speaker series. The stuff I found the most exciting was the intergenerational part. I think the interaction between generations is so critical to this and so important, as opposed to, and I don't want to demean it in any way, but a lecture series for seniors. I think that's important, but to me, the part that makes this exciting and different and unique and powerful for this community is the interaction between the generations. And I'd love to see as much programming as possible directed specifically at that, because I think that's what's most beneficial to everybody involved, from what I've seen.
Yeah, and it's been, it's a personal thing, but when you saw the picture of Sydney up there serving cake to that man, this is the third year she's done it. She loves to do this. She gets such a charge out of it. And just the facial expressions from some of the people that, when she passes them the cake, it just gets you all teary-eyed. And she feels very special about it. I have one gal that actually, she lives in Larkspur, and her daughter is about 10 or 11. And when I told her about this intergenerational thing, she said, "Oh, Scarlett and I, we'll do that. We'll do whatever." And her daughter has been doing it, or did it while her grandmother was living over in Aegis for quite a while, just going around to people. But I agree. I think that it's really something very special, and a lot of people don't have that opportunity, particularly families that, are divided by miles. That, well, obviously I'm sold on it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What did you want to say, Patty? You get a special pass.
I didn't want to conflate the third Wednesday speaker series with the Intergenerational Center. There would be no space for 50 people to come to there. We're continuing with the CFPA.
Okay.
Yeah, he can't hear it.
There was a question about the speaker series. The speaker series is a separate program, and that would probably remain at the police facility because they can accommodate 50 people. Not sure we can accommodate 50 here, but maybe if it expands someday, who knows? Okay. You all done, Sloan?
Yes.
Okay. My turn? Great job. To all of you who are working on Age Friendly. I'm very excited about this because I've long thought that this particular wing of the community center is underutilized. The staff, has huge space with I don't know how many cubicles in there for 2 full-time people and a few part-time seasonal. In addition, of course, we've got the 2 desks up front in the front lobby that can always be used for Parks and Rec staff as well. So I've been wanting to invest a little money in fixing this up. I'm embarrassed to hear that there's a Spanish class that uses that one classroom because it is a dreary classroom. The paint color is dreary. It has the worst fluorescent lighting. The wall doesn't even go all the way up to the ceiling. It's got the oldest tables and chairs. It could use a refresher. Folks that are learning Spanish could use a much cheerier atmosphere. And when we passed the sales tax override, the sales tax increase, one of the things we talked about is spending money on teen and senior programs, which is why I think this is precisely the kind of thing that could use some investment, a modest investment. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There have been times in this town's past where I think we've gotten maybe in a little over our heads with the spending. I have been on the council now for 8 years. The vast majority of that time was dealing with some really, really severe financial difficulties. I started in December of '09, and we were just getting slammed with the economic downturn, and it was really, really painful. So I think this council has worked, over the last several years, really 8 years, has worked so hard to strengthen this town's finances. And we are really very financially strong right now. A good part of that is because of the sales tax override, and we now have some good reserves on hand. I don't want to see this town invest too much into a program until we can prove that it has legs, that there is enough participation, that there is a true need, and that the costs can be covered through participation, through grants, some from the general fund perhaps, but that would be my goal long-term. Short-term, I think absolutely this town is ready for an investment in this part of the community center to fix it up. I'm very excited about that. What I would like to see the goal being is not only a business plan like Sloan mentioned, a plan showing what kinds of programs and things like that, how we can reach out to the community, not only to attract seniors, but also maybe other groups, as well as small children and teens. And I loved your idea about the teens, Jim. Good luck with that. I'm thinking we could offer them, coupons to go get a Rockstar over at Cafe Verde. I don't think they stock Rockstar, but maybe they could try, the little caffeine drinks. Anyway. But what I would also like to see, the goal being, is to come up with some performance metrics of this program. So as you're looking at programming, let's keep track of things like participation. How many people are participating by age group, the number of programs, the utilization of this space, if this is indeed the kind of configuration we go for, which I think really makes sense. It gives you 3 classrooms, that 2 of which can expand. I think it's, and 1 of which is kind of more loungy, but good for smaller programs. Also, the number of community groups that participate, and I'm thinking things like bringing preschools in, have a craft or, potting plants or something like that. So while we might not be operating a preschool there at the community center, we can reach out and bring them in for a day. Possibly assisted living also. Maybe they'd be willing to come for programs or something. So that's what I had to say. Good luck, very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing in the excitement. And I hope that in a surprisingly short time, you'll all see that this area isn't adequate and that maybe a 2-story building might serve the purpose well. So we'll see.
Just remember, we're a tax base of 9,400 and some odd folks.
Right.
Thank you.
And we don't want it coming from bonds. We're hoping that it will be cost recovery, donations, grants, and the tax override.
Right.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you. Anything else to add? You feel like you got some direction,
Clear
Don?
direction. Thank you very much.
Good.
I'll come back to you. Thank
Good.
you.
All right, let's move on. Agenda item 6.1.2, discussion and possible change to mayor and town council reorganization procedures. Rebecca.
I can do this one. I might need some help with this one. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. As we know, the first meeting in December is usually reserved for the reorganization of the town council and the selection of a mayor and a vice mayor. And as we entered into the revising of our town council rules and procedures and also setting upcoming agendas, it came to notice that due to our change in election cycles this year, without having an election in December or in November, that we had some options available and needed direction on how to proceed with agendizing the town council reorganization. I outlined 3 of the options as it occurred to us. One, which is choosing not to reorganize at the upcoming council meeting and instead voting to extend the current terms of mayor and vice mayor through July 2018 to coincide with the Marin County Election Department's certification of the results of the next municipal election. Option 2 would be to consider reorganization at the December 5th Town Council meeting and select a new mayor and vice mayor to serve in those capacities for the next 7 months until certification of the June 2018 election. So essentially, we would be delaying reorganization until whichever meeting is our first meeting in July. Sometimes we cancel the first meeting in July, so reorganization would take place at the second meeting in July in that case. And then the third option available for your consideration is to consider reorganization at the December 5th Town Council meeting and select a new mayor and vice mayor to serve in those capacities for 1 year until December 2018. The issues that arise with reorganization at this time is we don't yet know what we're doing with the 2019 elections. We, at some point during the next calendar year, will need to decide if we are going to proceed with the November 2019 election, which is currently scheduled to take place with electing council members to 4.5-year terms, or if we will also elect to extend those terms to a June, well, actually it would be a March 2020 election because we were waiting to see what happened with the state legislature and moving the presidential primaries. So we don't need to think about that this evening, but that is just one option. If you reorganize for a full year, then you could reorganize again in December 2018, knowing that we would have an election in November of 2019. Again, all up in the air right now. Those 3 options are what is up for discussion this evening. Did you have anything to add, Todd?
There's
Thank
not a
you.
single member of the public present.
Should I open it up to public comment?
Do we know how to clear a room or what?
Yeah.
I bored everybody.
All right. Any questions? All right, seriously, is there any member of the public who would like to speak? Seeing none, bringing it back. Who wants to go first?
Literally none.
I'm leaning towards 3, just because, worst case, okay. I'm leaning towards 3 just because we do not know what the term duration will be over the next couple of election cycles. And worst case, we could, maybe in either July or April of one of those years, we might have to suspend the rules and then select a mayor or make a determination at that time. So.
Yes, Rebecca?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to point to add that in the next item for approving the town council rules and procedures, section 2.2 was basically revised to reflect that town council organization would take place in connection with the certification of the elections. It didn't mention a specific date. So if we do fully move to even years in the spring, that would take into account that in presidential primary years, it would be March of an even year, and in non-presidential primary years, it would be June.
Or at the very least, it would be July of next year, and then
Correct.
we'll figure it out
Exactly.
from there. So, okay. That it? Anybody else?
I mean, to me, the easiest thing is to just extend the current terms. I don't know, but do you guys want to? If we did that, Diane and Carla, can you just, would you want to do that? If that was made available to you, to just
I'd be fine
do
with
what
that.
you're doing for another 6 months, or whatever it is, until we vote? Do you care, Carla?
I mean, whatever the council wants, I mean, because it just, then Diane would stay on, and I would stay on as vice mayor.
Yeah.
Or then the alternative would be for me to move up.
Oh,
But
I see.
You see what I mean? So, I mean, I will go with whatever the council wants to do.
Okay.
Bob?
I would be with Sloan on this one. If we were to reorganize in December, there's an election in June, as I recall, with potentially 3 new council members, and we could be in a position by July of having to redo this all again. Whereas, am I wrong on that? Or did I? Okay. Or if we just extend everybody 6 months, we can then, or whoever is here, not to be presumptive whatsoever, whoever is here can then just reorganize with the people that are here and then just go ahead for a 1-year term. I mean, that just seems to make the most sense. Having been through this also in the past, there's a seasonality that seems to work with doing it with the election, because at the same time, you can also reassign all the committee memberships, which if you have new people involved, which there's a chance, obviously, that we will, you can make those new assignments at the same time. And it's really good to just kind of do it, I think, all at the same time. It just makes it simpler and cleaner for everybody involved. So I'd be in favor of just extending through July 18.
Want to add anything?
No.
Sloan?
What would you like to do?
Well, that's not fair. Everybody loves to be mayor. That's,
Okay.
So,
I mean, because I give great respect to that. So
but I have no problem with,
Right.
having Diane stay on. Whatever, like I say, whatever is the wish of the council, it's fine with me.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to the rest of you folks.
But if you had your druthers, you'd rather stay, right?
I am happy to stay on.
Okay. And
I
Jim,
will
if it
not
was up to you,
say what my preference
if it was up to you, we'd redo
happy
it.
to do
Stay
whatever.
on the December schedule until,
Okay. So we have no consensus whatsoever.
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, talk it out, folks.
To be honest, I'm okay with any of the 3 options. If anybody felt strongly about any of the 3, I would be willing to bend. My knee jerk was to go with the path of least resistance, seemed to just continue in the same way that we just continued our terms by another X number of months to avoid the cost of an election. We would just continue everything for another few months to avoid the kerfuffle. But that was the depth of my reasoning on that.
Any other thoughts over here?
I would concur with that. I mean, it just seems, and with all due respect to Carla and Diane and the jobs you are currently doing and the jobs you may potentially be doing, it just seems the whole thing is cleaner, simpler, more methodical if we just continue with where we are, so that when there's a new election in June, whoever is sitting here, and if 2 of us will be sitting here, maybe more, those folks can decide who the mayor is going to be and who the vice mayor is going to be. If we change in June, you're going to be forced to change, I mean, in December, we're going to, potentially going to be forced to change it all again in June. You're going to change committee assignments? I mean, would you change committee assignments in December again and do all of that as well? I mean, if you really want it, I defer to you as well. Same thing Sloan just said. If you want us to make you mayor, I'm happy to do it, and, we'll do that. But
Okay, so.
I don't,
Yes?
I was thinking we flip a coin.
Jim, you're on the outside on this one. Come on.
I'll compromise, 2.
What's 2?
2.
It was to switch for 6
Oh.
months.
Well, but if you do that, and you run again, and you win, then you're stuck with a change again, and you only had a 6-month term. I don't know. But it would be a compromise.
Is it something we have to decide right now?
Yeah.
Well, the next meeting.
Yes.
We typically reorganize the first meeting in December.
So
So
if
this
we-
is coming to you now for a decision and for guidance on what needs to be on the agenda for consideration at the next council meeting. We could put a reorganization on the agenda for the next council meeting, and at that point, can they decide if they want 6 months or a year?
They could, and they could also decide not to reorganize at all at that point and to keep the current configuration by extending the terms. So that could all go on the agenda, so you have the ability to do any of those things. I will say, if you are going to extend the term of the current mayor and vice mayor, you would need to take a motion to suspend your rules, because your current rules cap the term at a year. But that can be done by motion, and it just requires a majority. It's sort of a one-time suspension of the rule.
All right.
I wouldn't mind a little more time to think this through, honestly. My instinct didn't sniff that this is something that I needed to think through deeper, and I didn't think it through deeply enough, so maybe
Okay.
we postpone the decision-making for
Can we
that.
deal with this on the next one? Next
Bob, are
agenda?
you okay with that? Or
Sure.
would you rather just get it done?
We punted it last time, we can punt it one more time.
Plus, it's 9:14, and we still have council
Yes.
rules.
And I am
So-
leaving at 9:30 unless there is a vote.
Yeah, well, no, we haven't adopted that rule yet.
True.
Oh, my God, let's adopt that rule.
So it is the direction to put
We are gonna
consideration of
Continue.
reorganization.
Continue this to the next meeting. All right?
Okay.
I thought we were scheduling it. And deciding what to do.
What's that?
Is our next meeting December? Do we have another one in this month?
We have one, no, it's Thanksgiving.
Of course, okay. I didn't, okay.
Are we
December it is.
going to
Oh, there's
vote
not one
on
the
reorganization?
third
and
week?
at that time decide to
Is it?
suspend the rules?
Because,
or not?
why?
Yeah, we're punting for the next meeting.
It's gonna be on,
Okay,
it'll
what
be,
happens
it'll
with
be
the
on
rest
as a
of us?
reorganization.
Nope.
Decision here, okay, good.
Okay.
It's December 2nd.
Oh, so, okay.
Could they potentially reorganize it?
Do we have a second meeting in December? Okay.
I mean, could we decide this at the December 5th meeting and then reorganize this and then vote? I only ask because usually there's some fanfare and gifts and plaques and things to order. And I don't know what to be.
Fanfare can always wait.
You can certainly do it. You'd probably have to, again, waive your rule, because your rule, I think, is having it as the first meeting in December. But all of this is done by rule, and you can waive it. You have a rule that provides that mechanism, and even if you didn't, it can't bind you
I
anyway.
mean, the way we describe it on the agenda is going to be the same under any circumstance, which is at our next regular council meeting, we're going to decide who the mayor is, right?
I will put the language for reorganization on the agenda along after this agenda item.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I think you can move your reorganization date if you want, but it would require you at the next meeting to make a motion to do that.
Right, so can we just have that very clearly laid out in our options? So if we put off, or whatever, just lay it out what exactly we'll need to do. And if we need to put off the reorganization.
In the past few years, we have gone back and forth between reorganizing at the beginning of the meeting versus reorganizing at the end of the meeting. We can prepare for a reorganization to take place at the end of the December 5th council meeting.
Okay.
After this appears again as a business item for consideration, if
Sounds
that
good.
would work.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, or can we move on? All right. Moving on to 6.1.3, second reading of proposed revisions to Town Council rules and procedures and possible action to approve Resolution 53/2017.
I move we adopt the draft revision.
I've got a few.
Oh, my God.
Oh, jeez. Second reading.
There were some changes. So,
Madam Mayor?
yes.
If I may, the staff report covers a majority of the changes. I'm just wondering on your comments, one option for us is, the code of conduct is, 3 or 4 pages. It's at the end.
Read it.
It is an option.
Saw it. Agreed. Done.
Love it.
Well,
Never mind.
I actually
bring it back
had
to you.
a little bit of confusion about one element of it, and that is that it switched back and forth between referring to council members and members. And it said that the rules also apply to members of commissions, but then it talked about things that only the council does. For instance, confidential information. I mean, I don't think any commission members deal with things like that.
Actually, they do.
All right, well, dealing with staff, I mean, I'm not really sure. Anyway, I just think we need to be a little more consistent with the terminology. If we're going to use members, if there are things that only apply to town council members, I think that should be clearly laid out. I personally think under 12, the policy role regarding the interaction with town staff maybe needs to be strengthened a little bit.
Wait, let me just read that one again.
Well, if you look at the staff report,
I'm reading 12.
oh, here, okay, do you want?
Where are you?
Here, I'll go to the red line version, hold on.
Line version.
Okay, hold on. Red line version, page 25. Policy role of council members. Last sentence. Council members therefore shall not interfere with the administrative functions of the town or the professional duties of town staff, nor shall they impair the ability of staff to implement council policy decisions. I think that's a really key one, especially, I've heard horror stories in other cities of council members that have gone after staff and tried to undermine maybe what the city manager was doing or something like that. So I think, Teresa, if you feel this is strong enough, that's fine, but I personally feel like it could be maybe a little bit more clear that council members do not direct staff's work, that they are to go through the town manager. The next one, number 13, independence of boards and commissions. It says, council shall refrain from using their position to influence the deliberations or outcomes of commission proceedings. But what about something, for instance, like the BPAC or the Flood Control Board? We have council members that sit on those boards and commissions that actively participate in deliberations and votes. So I think we need to be careful about that.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
If there is particular information I'd want to see coming up from the Planning Commission, could I go to a Planning Commission meeting and say, hey, I would really like to see this information if you send it up to us?
This is your code of conduct. A council
I'm
member
asking.
can certainly, if you want to be able to do that, I think requests for information, you could make an exemption or a clear statement that requests for information, this doesn't apply to requests for information. But then,
All requests for information, I think, should go through the town manager. You don't go directly to the commission, you go to Todd.
Okay,
And that needs to be made a little bit more clear.
okay, that's why I asked.
Yeah. Backing up a little bit, number 10, representation of private interests. In keeping with their role as stewards of the public interest, council members shall not appear on behalf of the private interests of third parties before the council or any commissions or proceedings of the town. Sounds very logical, but when you start thinking about things like age-friendly 501c3, it gets a little murkier, because we actually have a liaison to the 501c3. Same with Chamber of Commerce. So maybe we can specifically list those two organizations as exceptions?
Well, it is an age-friendly Corte Madera that is the 501c3. It's age-friendly solutions. It's a completely different thing that we would just be raising money to give to the town for programs and services and maybe building.
Okay, so maybe that would be okay. All right, what about chamber? Do you think we would need a carve out for the chamber? No, we wouldn't, would we?
No, that's an independent.
All right, you think we're okay?
I think that this rule is fine. I think that there is a question about the application and what truly is a third party and what is not a third party. As I understand it, has the council appointed the vice mayor to the task force for age-friendly?
Mm-hmm.
So that is not a third party. That's a council appointment to a task force. And so having the vice mayor come forward with information about age-friendly would not violate this rule because it wouldn't be a third party.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. And then backing up a little bit more, number 8, confidential information. The very last part of that section, last sentence, if a council member has any doubt about whether particular information is confidential, he or she should consult with the town attorney. I think we need to be careful authorizing a blanket ability of any council member to go directly to our town attorney with any questions. I've heard stories in other cities of council members that have done that and racked up some pretty serious legal bills. So I don't know how we navigate that.
I think this is simply a question of is this or is this not confidential? You're not going to rack up much of a legal bill with that kind of an interchange. But certainly, as I understand it, individual council, there's not really an ability of individual council members to come forward and ask legal questions to the town attorney unless it's a conflict matter. And I would put a question about, is this confidential, or can you explain what you said the other day, kind of thing, like really short types of things. But I am fully aware that it's the will of the council not to authorize individual council members to ask for in-depth legal research without getting further approval from either the council as a whole or the town manager. And so I think you all know that. I know that. If someone forgets, I'm not going to forget. You're not going to end up with a huge legal bill that then surprises everyone.
Can we talk about that for one second? Although I haven't done it in a long time, there have been times in the past where the thing that confuses me most about our role here has to do with conflicts of interest thing. Forget about if we're geographically in an area, but if I've got a brother-in-law who used to work for a company, you know what I mean? And that's the kind of thing that, do we not have the freedom to just randomly call you when I confront that, right?
I would absolutely encourage you to do that because I am not going to be able to flag for you all of your conflicts of interest because I don't know.
You don't know who my brother-in-law is.
I don't know who your brother-in-law is. I don't know sources of income. If I see something that looks like a conflict, you will probably get a phone call from me for me to explore it. But please, please don't wait for me. I need you to flag them. And it is, even if there is a rule that you need council approval or town manager approval to ask for legal research, it is customary that that doesn't apply to complex questions, because part of my job is to give you the advice that you need sitting as a council member as to what those rules are. And some of them are easy to figure out, others are not so easy to figure out. So I would encourage council members to make that phone call and not to have the council restrict its members from doing that.
And the way it's currently written, we enjoy that same freedom.
This would not, there's nothing in here that would preclude you from doing that.
Got it.
And then backing up to the section 2. I'm sorry, hold on. Sorry, I'm kind of going backwards here. 7.5, so it's on page 17 of the red line version. At the very top, I just think that last sentence in the kind of purpley blue box is a little awkward. So I would simply like to move the "if warranted" up in that sentence so that it reads, once the preliminary evaluation is complete, the town manager will consult with the mayor to determine if placement on an agenda is warranted, comma, and if so, the appropriate meeting date to bring the item forward for consideration. I think it makes it a little bit more clear that that the town manager and the mayor are the ones that will ultimately determine if it's warranted to be placed on an agenda. Page 14 of the red line version, for appeals, item number, so there are 10 numbered items here. I would like to see item number 4 broken out into a 4A and a 4B. Historically, I believe we have always had the appellant go first and then the applicant in that section. And then under number 7, I think we should have a 7A and a 7B. And I believe the order was switched. So 7A would be rebuttal by applicant, 7B would be rebuttal by appellant. And I wonder if after those rebuttals, we want to offer additional council questions.
I think that's fine.
Okay, and then close public portion of the hearing.
So we would add a
New 8,
council questions.
and then 8 becomes 9, 9 becomes 10, 10 becomes 11. But I think that really kind of lays it out a little bit more clearly, exactly the order and the timing of time restraints for those 2 items. And anybody pipe in if you don't agree. There was a question on page 11. Does council want to give the mayor authority to reschedule regular meetings also? I personally would say yes, it would happen so rarely. This is 5.1 on page 11.
Would it be the mayor and manager together,
Yes, mayor and manager together.
since the manager has to show up?
Yes, good point.
Do you want to say the mayor in consultation with the town manager?
Yes.
Because the mayor then is making the call.
Sounds good. And I would guess 99.9% of the time, the mayor would want the entire council to vote on that. But there may come a point, incident, or an instance where they don't have that
If the
luxury.
mayor is not available, vice mayor?
I don't know. I'll leave it to Teresa. Page 9. Quorum and majority vote. Do we want to address what would happen if there was a major disaster and perhaps a quorum, at least 3 members of the council are unavailable, incapacitated, or dead? What would happen? Or is that kind of outlined maybe at the state level? I don't know.
So there is a procedure if you have a true vacancy, which is more than just unavailable. But if you have a vacancy, so if a council member were to pass away or to be,
Rendered incompetent.
rendered incompetent or, lost for a long period of time or other things that lead to the conclusion that the council member, that the seat is now vacant. There is a state law provision that would allow the council to, by ordinance, essentially call for an automatic special election. In the event of any vacancy, you could use that authority to say if there is a vacancy of 3 council members or more, that you essentially are calling, then by virtue of the ordinance, you are automatically a special election would be called. So there wouldn't be a need for any additional legislative act in order to call the special election. Council, the town staff would be able to move forward with making that happen. In terms of what you do between the time that sort of vacancy that causes you not to be able to achieve a quorum on a permanent basis happens, and the time a special election happens and the seats are filled, I can take a look to see what, I haven't had the occasion to look at this before, fortunately, but I can take a look to see what state law, what procedure state law would allow for a temporary, perhaps, appointment procedure. The difficulty is ordinarily the full council would need to make that appointment.
Right, or I'm also thinking, if there was a major disaster and there are only 2 council members left, can that constitute a quorum?
I need to take a look at state law and see what the options are, and I can bring that back to you. And I can also bring back an ordinance that would achieve the, if you like, achieve what you do going forward.
Okay. And then I think my only other one is on page 6 of the red line version, 2.2, presiding officer. What would happen if there just happened to be no county election? Should we, would there ever not be a county election that might,
I think if
June or?
I think if that were going to happen, I would recommend that you deal with that on a case-by-case basis. I'm not aware of that ever happening. Oftentimes, there isn't an election, but there is an election schedule, and so you might be able to, yours may be the only thing on the ballot, which may impact the cost, but council could certainly, again, suspend its rules and make a change there.
Okay, this has to do more with reorganization. So we just suspend the rules and declare a date.
Yes, you would
Okay.
you would suspend a rule and move a term essentially and declare a date.
Got it. Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Yes, number 8 on page 19. I think I'd recommend breaking it out into 4 paragraphs and insert a middle paragraph that describes the exceptions under section 54-963. Here's a markup if you guys want to review it. Basically make it section, item 8, make it 4 paragraphs,
Ah,
and insert a third paragraph, which I borrowed from the Brown Act pamphlet.
Jim, I'm sorry, where are we? I've got this, but I was
he
just
wants to
looking for-
insert this from the Brown Act
Basically turn it into 4
into
paragraphs.
paragraph 8.
Okay, that's, I'm looking for paragraph 8. 8?
Yeah, I mean, this is Brown Act. I mean, we have to comply with the Brown Act. But do we want to add all, can we make this a little more concise?
What is he?
I mean, I don't care. We can add the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just,
The other way to do it, if you don't want to list it all out, is to say consistent with
The Brown Act.
section, the Brown Act or section blah, 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 and just put that in there, which would cover those bases fully. I don't know whether the desire is to call them out or just to make sure that a council member isn't being censured for something that the Brown Act states the council member can't be censured for. So would the council member be comfortable with just adding a language subject to subject to the limitations set forth in the Brown Act?
Or the exceptions in the Brown Act.
Right, so you call them limit, okay. All right, anything else?
That's it.
I actually kind of thought that there was some parts at the beginning of the code of conduct that were slightly repetitive, although I thought it was all really well written. Hold on, looking for it. Well, I just think, for instance, on page 22 of the red line version, the paragraph that begins the constant and consistent themes, I think that entire paragraph can be consolidated down to members or council members shall conduct themselves with respect, courtesy, and professionalism, period.
What number are you doing, Diane?
Page 22, the paragraph that begins the constant and consistent themes. I'm just trying to get things more concise.
yeah.
I
You
think
know,
it
I
can be
think-
a bullet point that says respect, courtesy, and professionalism.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think that when it comes to this code of conduct, that any way we could abbreviate it is
I agree.
is beneficial.
I was kind of hoping one page, but.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because I think this lends a lot of negativity to the process that I don't think we need to.
Madam Mayor, members, may I recommend, if there's no other changes, if the focus is on the code of conduct, may I suggest that staff work with the mayor on trying to condense this and simplify it and come back to council on the consent calendar at the next meeting for approval? Would that be acceptable?
You all good with that?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the censor? Because I know that there was some question about that at the last meeting. I have heard a little bit of feedback from the community that it can be a very divisive kind of a process, but I can imagine it would only ever be used if there was a really serious problem.
Yeah, I mean, having served on the council for over 16 years, I've never seen this. I don't think that we've ever had a real dysfunctional council. And again, I think it lends to a lot of negativity that doesn't really apply. I think that if something happened that was really egregious, there would be some way to address it, other than perhaps this, or to the length that this goes.
Well, I do want to see a code of conduct. Every other
Oh,
city,
no,
I
no.
think, has the code
No,
of
no, I'm
conduct.
talking about the censure
question,
thing.
Right, the question is, do we have that? Sloan, do you have any feeling about it?
No, I thought you wanted it, Diane.
I personally think it's good, but I don't want to push for it if I'm the only one. I'm not getting a whole lot of feedback from you folks. I'm asking for feedback here. Carla just said it sounded like Carla was a little uneasy with it.
Yeah, I mean,
You'd prefer not having it. Not every council has it.
right, and I've never seen things happen on the Corte Madera Council that might occur on other councils where
Yes.
it is necessary. And I think that if ever, and goodness knows, we hope it never occurs, but if something looks like it's going to happen, then we can amend this and put it in.
Wait, can I ask a question? Teresa, let's imagine tomorrow, one of us goes bananas and goes on camera and says some abhorrent thing about some elected official or something that's truly, not cool, like 1,000%. And the other four of us thought that was a terrible thing and brought disrespect to the town. Okay, now what do we do?
We will render you incapacitated.
You could at that time adopt a censure policy and then proceed with censuring, a
In other
censuring
words,
process.
you would agendize at the next council meeting an issue to adopt a policy to censure that repulsive council member.
No, you would adopt a policy, a generic policy,
I see.
a censure policy, much like what you have here or some other censure policy if you don't like this one. Then after it's been adopted, and it takes effect immediately, you're adopting it by resolution as part of your
Then
rules.
later in that agenda, you could actually do it.
You would probably move it to another agenda because you'd then have to give notice and there would be no process under which to give notice until you've adopted the policy. So it would probably be a two-step process.
But the
So it
pol-
would slow you down a little.
But wouldn't the policy probably include a process for trying to work it out before it gets to the censor process?
This policy there's language in here saying this is sort of the last resort.
Yeah.
And so that would certainly give you the time to work out in a less formal way, whatever the issue is within the confines of the Brown Act.
I just think if you're going to have a code of conduct, you have two options. One, you write a summary statement that we're going to be good human beings, and it's a paragraph. Or you really spell out a true code of conduct, and if you do that in this case, that's what we did. You should have a policy of what you do if someone violates it. I mean, those are really the two ways to do it. We can certainly do this in a paragraph if you'd like, but it doesn't spell out, it doesn't really solve your problem. It's just words in a paragraph. And and people do it both ways. As a staff level, I know that we talked about keeping this at a paragraph, and we really contemplated it as staff. But where I come from, I just got to tell you that if you're going to do a code there's two ways to do it. And this is the one that we recommend, but we have no skin in the game. We can do it both ways. I just think a paragraph statement of we're going to be good human beings, and you spell it out, it's really not going to solve our problem other than it's just something we point to as a practice, and this is what we're trying to do.
So, I mean, my view is, why don't we just do it with the lengthy, potentially superfluous language that maybe we'd never have to use?
I hope we never have to use it, that's the point.
I'd agree with that.
You good with it?
Yeah.
Carla, can you live with it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try to edit it down as much as possible. Thank you.
Wait, so we can't adopt it yet? We gotta wait till you finish it?
But we will come back to you on the consent calendar for the
Okay.
next meeting with the help of the mayor.
Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to this? Seeing none, because nobody's here. All right, let's move on.
Diane, is this your handwriting?
No.
Oh.
Agenda item 6.1.4, consideration and possible action to appoint council members to represent the town of Corte Madera on 2 new ad hoc committees established by the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members. One is for the MCCMC pension and OPEB reform ad hoc committee, and the other one is a disaster preparedness ad hoc committee.
I'd be interested in a pension.
Done. No.
I can do disaster preparedness.
Done.
Great. Okay, would you like to move
Yes,
both those
move.
appointments?
Yes, I'll move Jim Andrews for the pension one, and in the separate motion, do we do 2 motions or just one?
One.
And I will concurrently move that Bob Ravazio be appointed on behalf of our fair city to the disaster preparedness one.
I'll second that.
Nope.
Diane, you should be the alternate for the pension thing, because you understand it.
All right, I'll be the alternate.
Does
for
anybody
the
want to be
pension.
the alternate for the disaster thing? I will be the alternate for the disaster thing.
Now,
All right,
you're going to be going to it anyway, right?
so did you just amend
Amend
your
it so with
motion?
Diane and I as alternates respectively for pension and disaster.
Okay, who's seconding?
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews?
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Ravazio?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Condon?
Yes.
Mayor First?
Yes. Thank you to both of you for stepping up. Appreciate
You're in
that.
charge of disasters and slums.
All righty. Moving on. 7, town manager and council reports.
Please read the newsletter. My comments will be in it.
Councilmember reports.
No reports,
Sloan?
thank you.
Okay, and I attended the police council meeting, and we have some new people on the staff of the police department. One young lady had gone through the cadet stuff and all that, but she was also growing up part of the, what's the term in the kids in school? Oh, it was a cadet program. And so anyway, that was really good to get some people that are very enthusiastic and that are local. And trying to think if there was something else. And basically, we had to do a revision to the JPA because we're kind of putting Larkspur, Corte Madera, and San Anselmo kind of on an even scale. And at the time before, San Anselmo had to kind of catch up. So we're trying to postpone that to get some parity, and so the time was right to do it. And that was about it. Oh, I attended the chamber. The chamber will be submitting their budget in beginning of December, or for the December meeting. They are doing very well with the reserves because they have been operating under the, I don't know if you want to say threat, but the cloud, if the Best Western closes, that the chamber will need a reserve to carry on. And so they have been doing that. And then the second week of December, I believe, the 14th maybe, is the, I'll get back to you on the definite date, but I think it's December 14th, for their holiday mixer. And that's always kind of fun, and they've got a lot of good refreshments. It's something not to miss. And the golf tournament had been postponed. Originally, it was their big fundraiser, and it was going to be in October. And unfortunately, it coincided with the fire. And so it was postponed, and it's going to be instead on Thursday, rain or shine. So anyways, I don't know if any of you had signed up for it, but there was only, I think, 6 people that out of the 66 that couldn't make it on Thursday. So they'll get a good turnout for that. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you. Jim?
No.
Bob?
Yeah, two quick things. We had a disaster council meeting on the morning the North Bay fire started, in an eerie coincidence of timing. So it was not very well attended. All the police and safety officers were usually there, were actually at the fires. But what has come out of that since then, interest in neighborhood response groups is suddenly off the charts, and the Howards are doing an unbelievable job in organizing. They are working, I think they've got a meeting almost every day with different neighborhood response groups. There's, I think, another half dozen groups now springing up in Larkspur. The Chapman Park meeting is actually happened tonight during our council meeting. I mean, so it's really moving forward. We even talked about a town-wide meeting, but there is tremendous energy and interest, and we're taking advantage of it and really trying to get organized. So we're turning that into a positive, and we're going to hopefully learn a lot from that. Secondly, from the Coalition Connection, we have a parent education event on November 28th at Sir Francis Drake High School called Marijuana is Legal, Now What? And the keynote speaker, there's going to be 4 speakers. The lead speaker is going to be Matt Willis, the county health officer, who we work with a lot now, who's terrific. Don Carney is going to be there, who runs the YMCA Restorative Justice Program, which we're starting to do a ton of work with now, and we find to be very effective. In our own Hamid Khalili from CMPA. So a really good program, 6:30, November 28th at Sir Francis Drake High School. Thank you.
Great. Oh, Diane, I thought of one, I missed
Yes.
one thing on the police. At Police Council also, Linda Henn came along with the young lady Abby. I don't recall her last name, but she's a student. And they made a presentation to the council that they would like the cities that have not already adopted the language for marijuana to adopt it. And so at some point, they will be coming before our council. It's already been adopted by the county, Mill Valley, and Novato.
And this
That's
is
for the social host ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, sorry, this social host, yes.
Okay.
And they gave a really, really good report, so we should be hearing from them before long. Sorry, social
okay.
host.
Thank you.
Doesn't
I attended the Transportation Authority of Marin. The 3rd lane on the Richmond Bridge is due to open the end of December, if you can believe it. At the last TAM board meeting, we had a presentation about potential solutions to Highway 37 and the flooding and sea level rise issues out there. I thought it was a very interesting presentation. There's, of course, video online. Also, TAM puts the PowerPoints at the bottom of their agenda as supplemental information, so you can always get their PowerPoints there if you're at all interested. There was a report made by our MTC rep, Damon Connolly, about what's going on at MTC to push for more development of more housing. There was originally a proposal in front of the commission that would have required all communities to actually build at least 15% of their RENA, as in issuing building permits. If they didn't meet the 15, and I think that really was for below, at low and very low market price. Anyway, for communities that didn't meet the 15% would have potentially lost their STIP, STIP, State Transportation Improvement Program, which is a huge funding source from the state. I mean, this is where we get a lot of our freeway funding. So that could have been really devastating for Marin. Luckily, it did not pass. But MTC has said that they want to develop supplemental housing criteria by next July. So the question is, will it be applicable to all funding sources? Will they just apply it to certain funding sources? This could be a very big issue for Marin. You heard Mike McGuire, our state senator, Mike McGuire, discuss this at the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members. This is a big issue, and we need to think about how we're going to address it.
Yeah, and can I add to that, Diane?
Sure.
So, Diane, I'd like to talk to you probably offline, but let me say for the benefit of the council, and if anybody in the public hears this, please reach out if you have suggestions or options for how we might be able to meet our arena numbers, or at least placate the state that Marin is doing kind of our fair share in trying to account for the housing crisis. And one of the proposals that's been discussed is maybe we can aggregate all of the potentially buildable units or spots in Marin County rather than trying to allocate it on a town-by-town basis and then try to get those town-by-towns to show how they can build 15% in Corte Madera or whatever, with some mitigation efforts as between towns in more a general way, because there are parts in our own county, for example, especially in San Rafael and Novato, which might be more amenable to building units than, for example, our own town, which is so thoroughly built out, but which maybe San Rafael and Novato doesn't have the resources or the inclination to do and so maybe with the support of the broader county, we could help our brother and sister towns not only do stuff that they maybe wouldn't otherwise be able to do, but that would then take pressure off towns like Corte Maderas of the world that either can't or has no inclination to do it at all. So that's one of the sorts of proposals that, even if it could never fly on a statewide level, provides our locally elected officials with at least a basis to present the case that Marin is not trying with the wealthy hot tubbing crowd to avoid responsibility. We just have a unique situation and few options available to us.
Excellent. I would also say that perhaps there would need to be some kind of for lack of a better term, I'm going to say lobbying effort to get the word out about some of the big barriers to building housing here in
Right.
Marin.
Well,
Off the top of my head, I can say the cost of land,
Yes.
the geography. We have some very steep hills that we're not going to be building on. There's a reason they're open space, because you're not going to go build a bunch of apartments on top of those hillsides. And then, of course, on the urbanized corridor, you've got a lot of land that is susceptible to flooding and sea level rise.
Yeah, so the way I understand it, the senator said we need to do three things. Number one, we need to tell the story about how it is wicked hard to build and virtually impossible locally. Number two, we need to demonstrate some actual successes, like some units, or, what do we call the lily pad things? You know what I mean? The
Junior, second
second units, and maybe a few projects or something. And then number three, we need to provide at least theoretically feasible alternatives that we could accept as a way to show, changes are possible.
Got it.
Yeah, can I mention something?
Sure.
That a while back, it was proposed that the county, instead of taking each city individually, that we do it as an
Yes.
aggregate, and it didn't fly. I think the only county, for some reason, I think it's Napa, only one county is allowed that. But it's certainly worth trying again.
San Mateo does it, and I thought Mendocino did it.
But in the North Bay.
Okay, all right.
And
Carl, I want to talk
Okay.
about that afterward, because there's something I want to ask you about that, but that'd be great.
yeah.
Not agendized, folks, that's not, okay. And then finally, just kind of a feel-good, very quick story. Do you remember Rhett Crowett?
Yes?
Yeah.
The young boy who had leukemia. He was really very ill, overcame it, but for a long time he was too ill to get his immunizations. And because the immunization rate at his school was really not great, he couldn't go to school. He and his dad lobbied to change the rules, both at the school board, and it ultimately went to the state and changed California law. He was granted a Make-A-Wish not long ago, and I want to preface this by saying that the Make-A-Wish Foundation representative said, this is not because these are folks that are terminally ill or whatever, Rhett's doing great. But he's still qualified for a wish. His wish is amazing. He and I think his dad are going to South Africa to visit the World Health Organization in South Africa and go out into the countryside to one of their programs where they're vaccinating people out in the countryside, which I just think is amazing. So that's our local Rhett crowd. Good job, Rhett. Have a great trip. If there's nothing else for reports, we have 8.1, review of draft agenda for our December 5th town council meeting.
Really, Madam Mayor, just quickly, we have two major items coming on our two council meetings in December. One will be potentially Restoration Hardware, and the other will begin the workshops for the noise ordinance leaf blower consideration. So we'll see what happens with the Planning Commission with Restoration Hardware this month, and we'll determine the next two council meetings based on that.
Thank you. Would staff please do your best to reach out to those folks who have expressed interest in leaf blowers and let them know about that?
We will.
I'm sure word will get out about Restoration Hardware, but I don't want leaf blowers to kind of fall through the cracks. Anything else? Any other changes? Great. Meeting adjourned, folks. Good night.